Good morning, everyone, and welcome to SHIPPED25. My name is John Bristow, Principal Developer Advocate here at Octopus Deploy. It's great to have you here. And as we explore the world of software delivery and platform engineering and where it's all headed, thank you for taking the time for joining us here today around the world, wherever you're watching from live or catching the replay. This event is for people who ship software, folks like yourself, engineers, platform teams, SREs, DevOps practitioners, and leaders working every day to deliver reliably at scale. Let's take a quick look at Shipped itself from a schedule perspective. So Shipped is available here. This is the website at octopus.com/shipped. We've built a 2-day program that covers modern delivery end-to-end with infrastructure orchestration, GitOps, Kubernetes, governance, scale, and platform engineering, all the stuff that you would like to see. Some of the few session highlights I'd like to note here. First, we have a brand new features. We have a lot of brand new features that are coming to Octopus, and we're going to share those as part of a keynote presentation that's going to be delivered by Paul. Colin's also going to be talking about those as well. And then following that, we're going to have our 2025.4 release party. This is going to be a great and wonderful opportunity for you to see all the great new stuff that we've shipped in 2025.4. If you don't have the time to watch that, that's fine. You can check out our What's New page. This is at octopus.com/what's new. You'll see a page that looks like this. And on this page, you'll be able to see all the latest features that we have just shipped as part of 2025.4, which just shipped last week. Getting back to our schedule, we have lots of really great highlights worth mentioning. We'll do a walkthrough of Platform Hub showing how platform teams can build consistent golden paths and scalable delivery patterns. We have a lot of sessions on Kubernetes and GitOps sessions, things like Argo C integration and multi-cluster workflows. We also have a lot of customer stories on Thursday, which is day 2. We've got a lot of partners and customers who will be speaking there, which is great. And we'll see a lot of great demos from them, live demos tying everything together with practical and working examples. So whether you're looking for architectural direction or a hands-on technical detail, this schedule has got something for you. Now, Octopus isn't just a product. It's actually a global community of practitioners sharing knowledge, ideas, and real-world solutions. A key part of that community is you, and on our Slack-based space where a lot of folks are asking questions, they troubleshoot together, exchange insights about how to use Octopus most effectively. On our webpage, you'll find a bunch of different resources available. You'll find these resources available here. You'll find webinars, blog posts, documentation, all kinds of tools that you can use to get real-world usage and community experience. And if you're not yet connected, this event is a great entry point. It's an easy way to learn from others and be part of a global group focused on improving how software gets delivered. So your feedback is what drives what we build. Many of the features that you'll see here today and several launching for the first time come directly from the challenges, the workflows, and expectations raised by teams like yours. Now, SHIPPED25 is Octopus Deploy's flagship virtual event. It's basically designed for DevOps and platform engineering teams, and it is there to provide you with the insight that you need for building out faster deliveries at scale. Now, you'll hear directly from Octopus leaders, the engineers building the product, a global lineup of industry experts, as I said before, all focused on continuous delivery, GitOps, and platform engineering. We'll take a look at what's new, we'll take a look at what's next, and we'll show you how these ideas translate into practical workflows your teams can adopt today. Now, Shipped takes place at the end of the year, also because it's the perfect moment for us to look back at what we've achieved together, all the features that have been shipped, all the problems that we've solved, and it's also a great time for us to celebrate the incredible work by our partners, our customers, and all the great things that you're doing with Octopus Deploy. Your success is the reason this event exists, and this is our opportunity to highlight and recognize that. So some notes about the live stream itself. So if you visited through octopus.com/shipped, great, you're in the right place. We are live streaming this across multiple platforms, as you may have noticed. So we have our events page. We have it also streaming to YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and Twitch. Use the platform that best works for you. If one stream has issues, just switch. Everything will broadcast redundantly. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is we are actually broadcasting these in 4-hour blocks, and that's because LinkedIn imposes really strict live stream duration limits. We can only get a 4-hour block stream to live stream. So unfortunately, that means we'll have to segment the segments. We'll have to segment the live stream into 4 blocks, but that's okay. Just stick to octopus.com/shipped and you'll have everything you need there to follow along. And by the way, as you're following along, feel free to participate in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Let us know what sort of things pique your interest. Send us your comments, your questions, your insights. We're monitoring the chat across every platform, and we'll bring questions into the sessions where they fit live. Now, a few housekeeping notes about this. You can join our community Slack at any time. Feel free to keep the conversation going there. You'll find that listed as part of our resources under our community page. You can subscribe to also our YouTube channel where all of our sessions will be posted. So this is our YouTube channel up on YouTube. You can like and subscribe, as the kids say. You'll see all the session recordings there, the deep dives, and also a lot of really cool new shows that we have available. So you'll see shows like Deploy on Friday, Argo Unpacked, etc. These are shows that we produce to educate and inform folks like yourselves who are interested in these topics. Deploy on Friday is a sort of weekly show that we do. Argo Unpacked, similar sort of nature. Also, feel free to follow us up on LinkedIn. We've got a lot of customers who follow us there. We post a lot of our news and announcements there. And also, we have our webinars, which are at octopus.com/webinars. In fact, we have one next month in the new year, January 15th. Might as well celebrate the new year with a really cool webinar. This one's going to be talking about policies, which is a new capability of Platform Hub, which we'll talk about in some detail here at Shipped. And so if you want to check that out, you can go ahead and register by visiting octopus.com/webinars. So all these links are available for you today to use today. So throughout today's course of events, you're going to see a lot of live and pre-recorded presentation. I know pre-recorded is not ideal, but it was because a lot of Octopus team members are based in Australia. This event runs during the extremely local hours. It's currently midnight where I am. Some sessions were recorded in advance, so even so, the presenters will be online during their segments to engage and answer any questions that you may have. So as far as resources concerned, we've talked about a lot of them there. One resource I did want to tell you about is one that we're launching. We haven't actually told anyone about this, but this is a brand new resource we have on our site called learning.octopus.com. This is our Octopus Fundamentals course. And the good news is by registering for Shipped, you'll be receiving an email soon with a voucher for this course for free. We're also proud to obviously recognize the fact that this is an extensive course that a lot of folks are going to use, but this is a part of our new platform that we have. And so if you're keen on that, let us know. Another thing I wanted to just mention briefly is that, of course, we're always keen on hearing about feedback. I've got a lot of feedback, and one of the sort of sources of feedback is, of course, Gartner Peer Insights, and we've got our QR code listed there. So feel free to scan that QR code. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear what you think about Octopus itself. Your feedback is really what makes the product everything worth everything that we do. So let us know. I'll keep that QR code up there so you can scan it and let us know what you think about Octopus. This year we've shipped a lot. We've delivered some major improvements across the platform. Some of the key themes include better orchestration across cloud, containers, Kubernetes. We've had a lot of innovation around building smarter and safer pipelines with clearer visibility and improved usability. We've done a lot around Kubernetes and GitOps. So things like Kubernetes Live Object Status and features around that. We've integrated with, obviously, Argo CD. A lot of this stuff you'll hear throughout the course of today. And if you want to find out more, of course, you can go to our roadmap, which is at roadmap.octopus.com. A lot of the features you'll hear talked about at SHIP25 are going to be featured, obviously, on this roadmap. And you can use this roadmap to not only see what we've shipped, also what we have planned to ship. And if you have an idea for a feature, you can just submit an idea through this website. So if you have an idea for a really cool feature, let us know. Some of the key themes, obviously, that we'll touch on here during Shipped over the next 2 days, obviously, themes like integration with Argo CD, or integration with Argo CD builds upon, it basically combines GitOps-driven cluster management with, obviously, the work that we do around Octopus for release orchestration. This basically allows you to run Argo syncs, health checks, cluster-level rollouts inside a governed workflow. This is ideal for multi-service, multi-cluster environments. Of course, we've also shipped Platform Hub. That's a really key feature. And you can find out more about these, obviously, on our use case pages. So here's one for Argo CD. Platform Hub was a massive feature for us this year. Supports the shift towards platform engineering. Provides a lot of golden paths, environmental catalogs, reusable templates and policies, which I just mentioned earlier. These and other capabilities provide your platform teams with consistent patterns at scale while keeping developers productive. And then finally, of course, one of the other aspects of Octopus is for the enterprise. Large organizations operate with a lot of complexity by default. And so Octopus provides and delivers RBAC integration, auditing, governance, federated team support required to operate, obviously, securely at scale, integrating seamlessly with products like Kubernetes, doing it in a GitOps fashion, variety of CI systems, and of course, Platform Hub. So as you can tell, we've got a very strong lineup of sessions, really great to see. We've got lots of demos to show, lots of really cool product announcements. I really hope you enjoy SHIP25. This is our 3rd year running it. I'm incredibly impressed by the quality of the speakers we have. By the way, you can see all those speakers at the bottom of the page here. We've got a lot of quality speakers who are going to be showcasing their knowledge and insights with you over the next 2 days. We're going to take a look at what's new, what's possible, what's next. So kicking things off, we've got Paul, who's going to be sharing our keynote address, and he's going to be talking about a lot of the new innovations that's happened. And then he's going to be followed up by Colin with a session you're not going to want to miss. So I'll be with you throughout the entire event, and we'll cut over to breaks and things like that. But in the meantime, please sit back, relax, and enjoy SHIP25. Thanks again for attending.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for Shipped. It's great to have you all here. Octopus exists to help ship your changes to production. So we call this conference Shipped because it's our chance to share with you what we've been working on, what's on our roadmap, and to talk about the challenges of shipping software with all of you. 2025 has been an incredibly busy year for us, and it's all thanks to you. We met thousands of you at events in person like KubeCon, AWS reInvent, and GitHub Universe. We've had weekly podcasts with Argo Unpacked, Deploy on Friday to keep some of those conversations going, talking about software development and Kubernetes and platform engineering. We published this year 2 major reports, one on the state of GitOps and one on platform engineering, the Platform Engineering Pulse Report. And these were our synthesis of research that we've done over the years with a lot of input from you that we hope you find valuable. We engage really deeply with the Kubernetes and GitOps communities, being top contributors to the Argo CD project, launching new GitOps training, and supporting open source contributors. We also spent the year visiting many of you on site, in person, in your offices. You welcomed us in to talk to us about how you're using Octopus, what the future of continuous delivery at your organizations look like, and all of that was really helpful in shaping the roadmap and the things that we worked on this year. Over the year, we conducted hundreds of interviews with you, and we collected over 2,000 pieces of survey input and feedback, all of which has made its way into our roadmap, including stories that you shared with us, many of those turned up on our website in the form of case studies to share with other people. Some of you also took gracious time to share with analyst firms like Gartner and Forrester to share your experiences with them, which we deeply appreciate. Of course, one of our most valuable pieces of feedback is support. This year, you sent us over 6,000 support tickets that we responded to. We sent about 22,000 responses to those tickets, and we set an incredibly high bar. Our global team responded to 99.8% of those tickets within 2 hours, helping to get software moving again, unblock issues, and often to untangle things that weren't directly related to Octopus and problems far beyond Octopus. If you compare us to any other vendor you work with, Octopus should be at the very top when it comes to responsiveness, customer service, accuracy, and genuine helpfulness. So whether you met us in person at an event this year, sent us a support ticket, welcomed us into your office, responded to one of our research surveys, or simply left a comment on, the 1 out of 10 scale, would you recommend Octopus, which we read every single one of those. Any bits of feedback like that, it all helped to shape this year. And so we deeply appreciate you taking the time to share with us. Oh, and it's not just work, by the way, this year. We had a little bit of fun. You might have seen some of our recent ads. Here's a couple of them in case you missed them.
Begin the deployment ritual. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Miss a step and it all breaks. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Miss a step and it all breaks. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Miss a step and it all breaks. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Miss a step and it all breaks.
We use Octopus for deployments now. Cute outfits though.
Oh, well.
Quit the midnight rituals. Make deployments simple and reliable with Octopus.
Hey, here's the deployment manual. Remember, make sure you follow each step exactly.
Yeah, I got it.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. Step 1, make sure the build is green. Okay, that's done. Step 2, check the target environment status while raising your right hand in the air. Okay. Step 8. Shoulder over the shoulder.
Exactly.
Pretty good at this. Final step, clap your hands and turn to the right. That was left.
Breaking news. All flights in the country have been grounded due to an IT outage. The cause is under investigation.
Leave no room for error. Make complex deployments simple and reliable with Octopus.
All right, this event is called SHIP, so let's get into it. I'm going to give you the high level, and then our product team is going to walk you through the things that they're really proud to show you. But I'm going to steal a little bit of their thunder just to kind of wrap it up. Everything you're about to see today ties together one long thread. How do we help your platform teams and DevOps teams to standardize how you do continuous delivery at scale in sensible ways, in ways that really work, that are reliable, that are compliant, and that deal with the challenges of modern DevOps and modern enterprises? A world where CD pipelines are being rebuilt from the ground up to work to deliver software to Kubernetes, but where we still need to deploy just about everything, and a world where LLMs and AI opens up new opportunities for how CD platforms can work. This year, we continue to invest majorly in Kubernetes. Kubernetes is the enterprise computing platform of the future. But while most companies are able to get 1 or 2 teams to successfully deliver software to Kubernetes, the challenge that all of you shared with us is, how do I get all of my teams to do this well? And how do I do it without giving them all production access to diagnose issues and troubleshoot things when things don't go right? This year, we shipped our Kubernetes agent, which makes connecting with your cluster easy. We brought live object status from Kubernetes objects into Octopus, so you can see after a deployment or during a deployment what's going on with the cluster, what's happening. You can fetch logs and diagnose and troubleshoot issues. And we launched Argo CD support within Octopus. Teams want declarative, Git-driven delivery, but they also need orchestration, promotion, and governance, things that Argo CD doesn't provide out of the box. This is now available within Octopus. So no matter how you're delivering software to Kubernetes, Octopus has a really great story to tell to help you enable your engineers, your application teams to ship software faster. In the last few years, we've also spent a lot of time with your platform teams. The challenges that we heard over and over again was that we know how to get one or two teams deploying applications well, but the struggle is how do we do things consistently at scale, especially when compliance becomes a bigger and bigger part of all of our businesses. And the balance is really hard to get. How do we enable people with blueprints and templates, but also not tie them into something where they're going to end up working around those things anyway to get software into production? What we saw over and over again were people using templating systems or other approaches to this problem where it just contributes to the sprawl. We create a template where everybody provisions a pipeline or something from it, just to then have problems with how do we maintain that going forward without having to go back and update hundreds and hundreds of pipelines. So this year we did something really unique. And look, I know I've got a bit of a bias here, but I think what we've done here is really unique. We launched Platform Hub as a new space within Octopus. And our goal is to create a place where platform teams can bring blueprints, templates, policies, governance, compliance, all of those things into one place. And we challenged ourselves to say, how do we help customers make every team as successful as their best team, while still allowing for flexibility and kind of dealing with the real world challenges of platforms, and particularly having a really strong focus on day 2, day 3, day 100 of these systems. When you use templates within Platform Hub, your consumers who use those templates can adapt, they can make changes, they can add steps in between. Likewise, you as the template author can continue to maintain and evolve the template. And we have a really good versioning and publishing story for how changes you as a platform team make apply to the application teams and vice versa. Now, our work around Kubernetes and Platform Hub only scratches the surface of all the other things our engineering team has been doing this year. We shipped many other features, which our product team is going to highlight soon, but they include things like config as code for runbooks, environment progression for Argo CD, ephemeral environments, which I'm particularly proud of. I don't know about you, but we spend a lot of money every year, because I see the finance side of Octopus. We spend a lot of money on dev, test, and production environments that we create and forget to delete, mostly because of feature branches and other things. Ephemeral environments within Octopus is built to solve that problem, so we can take a compliant policy approach to how we deal with ephemeral environments and to make it easier to work within the Octopus promotion lifecycles. And of course, there's AI. LLMs and AI agents provide new exciting opportunities to interact with Octopus. So we've launched our AI assistant as well as an MCP server and new AI-driven capabilities to help teams understand what's happening with the deployment, what's going wrong, onboard more easily, and automate repetitive work. We've also launched a really cool feature in Octopus called our recovery agent, which allows you to easily understand and diagnose what's gone wrong when a deployment fails and to recover from it quickly. I'll sum it up by saying, if you're building a CD platform, doing deployments, and particularly if Kubernetes is part of that platform, and you want it to be relevant in a world of AI, but still account for all of the other things that you deploy across your enterprise, that work seamlessly with all of the other CI/CD tools that you use, Octopus is right there with you. Thank you again for a wonderful 2025, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of Shipped.
Thank you for joining us at SHIPPed25. It's so awesome to have you here. Now, we build Octopus Deploy to help you deliver changes to production quickly and safely. Because when your code isn't deployed, it contributes to Ava's growing backlog of Jira tickets. They're just waiting to be closed. Or Barbara's big idea for the business that might get disrupted by competitors. Or Charlie's frustration growing as the same bug keeps getting in their way, even though the fix is code complete. I'm Colin Bowen, SVP of Product, and today I'm going to share with you stories that highlight some of the key investments that the 170 Octonauts in R&D have been working on over these last year or so. Now, these days, we're all expected to do more with less, move faster with AI, and still, we don't hear as many of those success stories from the teams as we would hope. We hear instead platform engineers spending a lot of time on basic support, helping application engineers troubleshoot the very platform that was meant to make their work easier. We hear from infrastructure engineers who wonder why people aren't excited about all the new ideas they're bringing to the table in the hosting platforms that they so lovingly crafted with platform engineers. And of course, application and DevOps engineers are still dealing with a never-ending backlog and barely have time to catch their breath. For some, using AI agents hasn't made their job any easier. But as technologists, we can bring calm and order to this fast and stressful pace. We want more stories like Ubisoft, who've reduced the time-consuming and error-prone manual tasks around deployment. And now they can deploy new releases in minutes. We want more like Eurofins, who deploy to 950 labs in 60 countries. By modeling their deployment processes across these locations, they now do hundreds of deployments every day. But maybe you've been where Scandia was, stuck with quarterly deployments. But now they do 10,000 deployments a month, making a huge shift to frequent and on-demand releases. And then there's Olo, who renovated their deployment process and now deploy several times a day. And they often release single ticket changes, which directly reduce the support work for their engineers. We already have the technology to make this happen. And so that's why it's our mission at Octopus, and it has and always will be, to find the best ways to get changes into production quickly and safely. We want every team to work as well as the best teams and to share those practices without making things harder, because we believe it should be as easy to work with on day 300 as it was on day 1. And we've been working to broaden the capabilities and deepen the capabilities of Octopus so that you can model continuous delivery for your team, your business unit, or your organization as a whole. Now, our product teams have been focused on 3 areas. If you were with us last year, you'll have heard of these before, because we told you the stories, and some of these the start and some of these the depth. We've taken them even further. Kubernetes is the new default computing platform for many organizations. And our goal is to simply make container-based apps feel familiar and simple, like they've always been with every other app. We want Kubernetes not to be overwhelming for the average engineer. So we've been building on what Argo CD started and put GitOps practices and principles in practice to create a familiar experience for developers while unlocking how platform engineers want to work. And speaking of platform engineers, they have a tough job. They need to reduce variation and manage risk across many different applications and architectures. We've got some unique ideas about how to make this possible. We're introducing a dedicated space called Platform Hub to bring these ideas to life. And of course, developers always being asked to do more with less. And we aim to keep their work simple, help them stay focused, and improve the feedback they get by making routine tasks easier and infusing AI where it truly is useful. We're helping you support your developers with practical features. All the same reasons you chose Octopus instead of building your own CD solution. Let's take a closer look at what we've been working on in some of these areas. Now, Octopus was created to make complex deployments easier across a range of hosting platforms. Deployments have always been complicated, and moving to Kubernetes has made them even more challenging for some organizations. Kubernetes has helped more teams use microservices by making it simpler to deploy small services. It's also made it easier to create new environments quickly and deploy consistently across different clouds and private data centers, as well as the edge. However, it's also made some of those deployment processes more complex. At Octopus, we viewed this as added complexity as an opportunity to improve how deployments are managed. And so we asked ourselves, how could we keep deployments simple and scalable while taking advantage of all the great things that our Kubernetes has to offer? So getting started with tools like Argo CD and learning GitOps basics, it's pretty simple. You can go from kube control apply to saving changes in source control and then watching them sync without much trouble. When you work with one or a few components, this process is pretty straightforward. It gives us a taste of what configuration management and change management have been trying to do for years. Any ITIL folks in the audience, you know what I mean. And any architecture workflow seems simple when everything goes as planned. But once you have to handle differences or changes, things get complicated really quickly. And we really see how robust new practices are when we try and use them across many different applications. Now, while each application runs in its own container, they can have a variety of configuration options and dependencies that span namespaces, clusters, regions, tenants, and so much more. And this usually depends on these applications typically also depend on things possibly outside the cluster, which need to be included in the workflow. And this will lead to thousands of YAML files, a mix of scripts and operators, all with different levels of quality. And so this is why maybe some of the platform engineers at KubeCon Atlanta joked that they were really just YAML engineers. Argo CD and GitOps principles are important parts of the process, but by themselves, they do not fully solve how to move changes from development to test to production. You'll likely fill in the missing parts by writing scripts and templates with your own rules and models. And while you may understand them well, the question is, will the next person find them as clear as you did? So I ask you to ask yourself, can the CI/CD pipelines that you are building today be maintained over time? Can somebody else easily change it? Will it meet the audit and compliance standards? And most importantly, would you be proud to present your approach at the next Shipped? We're always looking for speakers. We really want to hear your stories, not just for us, but for everybody else as well. So when you automate a process, making it work on day one is just the beginning. The real test is whether it still is easy and enjoyable use 300 days later. And so we've been working to make Kubernetes CD easier for everyone to use. With over a decade of CD focus across a variety of hosting platforms, we have learned what's important to maintain and where to expose concepts in more native ways. We see familiar challenges with Kubernetes. We believe there are concepts that should always feel familiar, like environment progression, while others, like resource state, should feel more native. Everyone is after the same goal, knowing when has my change been successfully deployed. And we've learned a lot from seeing how thousands of organizations use Kubernetes. And we're thankful that more teams are choosing Octopus for Kubernetes CD. It's giving us the energy and the appetite to build more on the experience by adding Argo CD to Octopus. This brings together what Argo CD is missing, along with familiar features and enterprise tools that you need for your most critical production deployments. So now you can link Argo CD instances with Octopus to manage and monitor your changes directly. And if some teams are not ready to move to Argo CD, it works just as well alongside Helm and Customize and Kube Control Apply, wherever your teams are at. And as part of your GitOps workflows, Octopus can commit changes for you in source control. And we'll verify that those changes have been successful by checking for commits, waiting on pull requests, or Argo CD application health checks. And we're wrapping all of the Kubernetes, Argo CD, and GitOps goodness with the best features of Octopus. That dashboard now shows you object status. You can double click to see which resources are out of sync or unhealthy. You also get Octopus's proven CD capabilities, including environment progression, configuration modeling, runbooks, tenants, and so much more. All of this built on a platform that includes the governance controls needed to restrict actions to authorize people, protect sensitive credentials, and create the audit trail that auditors love. This makes Octopus a strong choice for complex regulated environments that use Kubernetes. And we're going to make it even better. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about Platform Hub, which makes it easier to manage across thousands of microservices. With composable version templates and policies, large-scale systems are becoming significantly more manageable, a breath of fresh air for anyone who's spent their day wrangling thousands of YAML files. But now that we have the foundations for Argo CD and GitOps, we're working to make things even better. As Argo CD maintainers, our goal is to improve your experience, keeping Argo CD focused on its core design and adding the rest of CD around it. We expect to learn and iterate more, and so we're after your feedback as you begin to use Octopus and Argo CD together. For example, we often hear about Argo rollouts, and we're interested in learning how you use it with your application teams. Do the teams often adjust rollout settings, or do you mostly set them as a platform engineer and leave them alone? And we're bringing more Kubernetes CD features to help improve Argo and GitOps, meeting your teams where they are in their Kubernetes journey. So please keep sharing that feedback and ideas so we can all work together to deliver Kubernetes CD for everyone. Speaking of platform engineers, though, they aim to onboard, operate, and troubleshoot for their simplify onboarding, operations, and troubleshooting for their organization's hosting platforms. They need to make these processes easy and effective across different applications and architectures. And that can be tough when you consider the tools they have, the approaches they might be taking, and how they actually hold up over time. And so there are a number of ways of platform teams to set up templates. They could orchestrate creation through a developer portal, using templating tooling to generate instances, and create something that might achieve compliance through ITSM and SIEM integrations. And on day one, this is an ideal situation. Everyone follows the same process, enjoys the same benefits, and uses the same tools. The challenge they have is after almost a year, these problems begin to emerge. The platform team might decide to change from Splunk to Datadog, or the application team that's using one of the templates might look for a new tool. They might find Helm too difficult, or want to try customize, or prefer to use the latest tool in the ecosystem. Now we've got teams moving in different directions. And as a result, the burden falls to the platform team. They need to support and learn additional tools that the company does not officially support. They need to create complex workflows to manage these differences and find ways to keep teams informed. And they need to troubleshoot failed deployments caused by unknown changes, unknown tools, all which may in the end waste valuable time. A typical response to these sorts of problems is for platform engineers to become the only one to be able to make changes to pipelines and runbooks. And really what you end up with is Operations 2.0, where instead of passing the problems to operations, developers now pass them to platform teams. And this means that your platform engineers end up spending time on low-value tasks like debugging individual failed deployments. As a result, platform engineers try to cover every use case and build these really complex templates for everyone. But we all know that when you try and make something for everyone, it ends up working for no one. Platform Hub is unlike any other feature we've built at Octopus. It's a multi-year investment focused on solving problems that platforms engineers face every single day. Our goal is to help teams standardize all or parts of their pipelines, getting best practices out of the box and staying up to date as templates and policies change over time. We're making sure that it works just as well for new users on the first day as it does for the teams that'll be maintaining those projects months and years later. And we're making sure that templates are flexible enough to cover most needs, while still letting application teams add their own details without losing any of the benefits of templates, and in particular, connected version templates. And we're including policies and compliance features to make reporting easy and exception management smooth, so that auditors are satisfied and teams spend less time gathering audit evidence. We aim to do more than just give you templates and rules. Our design goal is to ensure that deployment pipelines are accessible to everyone, no black boxes. Just like how we made it easy to hand the deploy button to others, we want to do the same for platform engineers. Platform engineers are working together with application teams rather than making decisions without their input. We want their approach to allow the teams to share the right knowledge and collaborate, so that because platform engineers understand company policies and the tools in the deployment pipeline, while application teams know their applications and what's needed to run it. And we believe that what we really want to do is improve the communication, visibility, and teamwork between these two groups by using shared tools. However, we also know that not every team will want the same level of collaboration. We'll have to support teams with all preferences, from teams that just want to hand over their artifacts to those who want to build and manage most or all of their pipeline. So this year we released process templates. These are a key part of our approach to composable version templating. Now, if you've been waiting for composable step templates, this is an update for you. We focused on making them both powerful and easy to manage in all the ways that you've been asking for. Process templates is now available, and it covers things like multi-step templates for deployments and runbooks, versioning and syncing, including really unique push and pull technology, and injecting custom steps before and after. Now, while looking at platform teams' work, we realize it's also important to separate policies from templates. Policies are the guardrail to prevent unwanted situations, and auditors often want evidence that these policies both exist and are effective. And so we added policies using Open Policy Agent, so the checks are easy to see, understand, and audit. And you can choose whether you want to warn or block depending on the risk appetite of your pipeline. And to meet compliance needs, we started by building the policy engine. And we understand that you want visibility into policy evaluations, so we will record all of them in the audit log. And we'll also log out any deployments that happen without a policy evaluation. And since all of this is in the audit log, you can stream it to your SIEM and use those tools to set up alerts when you want to capture all the events that you want. And of course, the audit log lets you filter results and export them to CSV. But this is just the beginning in the compliance space. We've got a lot more to come in this space over the next year. So over the next few months, we plan to add templates at the project level to make onboarding simpler and to make maintaining projects at scale even easier. We'd also like to learn how you handle compliance in your organization, because our goal is to improve exception management so that it works well for both ongoing and rare exceptions. And your feedback will, of course, help us influence Platform Hub, this really critical multi-year investment for us at a very near important time where we want your feedback. Now, at Octopus, we also care about helping teams deploy more often. It's what we do. And developer experience for us isn't just a fad, it's part of what we think about with every feature we ship. And before we go any further, I want you to know that our goal is to help developers not only deploy quickly, but also lower failure rates, recover faster, and get the feedback all while staying focused. We believe this is the way to great developer experience. And so we're looking for all kinds of ways to remove the distractions that break engineers' focus. We're building experiences to work from the tools they already use. And we want to cut down on that context switching to make sure that teams stay focused to get more done. One example of this is your team may be already looking at how AI tools fit into your workflow. Well, we've just released an MCP server, so you can add Octopus to those workflows. And this is built after several years of working with GitHub on Copilot. We see this as a way for you to try out new ways of working by connecting your tools together. And it's open source and welcomes contributions. And most of all, we would love to hear how you use it. And we're also thoughtfully adding AI to the experiences where it can clearly improve how developers work and get feedback. Recovery Agent helps people quickly understand what happened, what steps to take next. And we really hope this is another tool that will help ease the support workload for DevOps and platform engineers everywhere. But sometimes issues happen because of a series of events or leave behind clues that are useful to look into. And we want to help you track back what has happened by adding the deployment timeline to the environment and tenant views. We think this will make it easier to see the history and connect some dots that might not be so obvious or not quite ready for an AI agent like the Recovery Agent to figure out. As the year wraps up, many organizations are entering that wonderful period known as the change freeze. And we want to cut down on those messages on Slack like, no more changes from Friday for 2 weeks because we've introduced deployment freezes. And now you can set freezes by project, environment, tenant, schedule regular freezes to run automatically, and use overrides for more urgent situations. Now, when you need to act fast, like when an application goes down or a critical security patch is needed, it's now easier than ever to prioritize deployments. And you can do this at the task level for those unexpected issues, at the deployment or runbook level for urgent work, and at the lifecycle level for important environments. But that's not all. There are plenty of other things I won't have time to cover today. And so if you subscribe to our newsletter, follow our What's New feed, you're probably aware or have heard of these changes. But if you haven't checked out what's new in a while, I encourage you to see what we've released over the past year. These are updates designed to help you reduce cognitive load, improve flow state, and make feedback loops even better, whether you're inside Octopus, administering Octopus, or scaling Octopus. Now, we have still a lot to do here, and plenty of new ideas that we want to share. For example, we've been testing feature toggles ourselves as a way to release changes to users without needing a deployment. And we're excited to add this to Octopus, giving you all the value in the box, including the audit and compliance controls that you want. We're also looking for how to add SBOMs and other types of metadata to help you better understand what is associated with the release and other Octo things. And changes is just the beginning for us as we explore what the next generation of continuous delivery will look like. Please keep an eye out for updates on this one. I really look forward to sharing with you some of the great ideas that we're baking in the years ahead. And of course, if you can't use GitHub in the cloud, we're going to make it possible to use the GitHub app with self-host setups too. So Octopus is built by a team of over 170 people in R&D, and along with many others who work with you through support and sales. And your feedback helps us improve our product, helps us improve our customer experience. We're always eager to learn with you as we build. And in some of the sessions today and tomorrow, we'll share with you what we've learned and experienced. And I'm looking forward to showing with you what we've done, why we've made certain choices, and what we've discovered along the way. And we try and turn whatever we learn from our research into publications to help you understand the latest trends and what people are actually experiencing in the real world, not just what you're hearing on social media. So we'll have sessions over the next 2 days that will explore a bunch of topics in detail from Octonauts, as well as stories from real world customers deploying changes just like you and me. So thank you for choosing to ship with Octopus Deploy. We really hope that these sessions that we've put together will help you learn from others about how they get changes into production quickly and safely, and how you can help every team work like the best team. Happy deployments.
All right. Thank you very much, Colin. Really appreciate it. And to Paul, wonderful stuff. And I know that they're recorded, but it's hard to keep folks up at 2 a.m. So there you go. Just wanted to reinforce some of the things that Colin mentioned. Obviously, I'm going to mention our schedule as well, but the research link that he shared earlier is going to point to this location here. So if you're at all curious, you can hit this URL here, which is our short URL, and it will take you to a page that looks like this. And this is where you can basically help shape the future of Octopus by joining our research panel. And so all is listed there. All right, jumping back to our schedule here, you can see that our next thing that we have scheduled is the 2025.4 release party. Yes, we'll be launching that in just a second here. Before we move on to that, I just want to let you know that all of the comments are being aggregated into our platform here, and we can see them all. So we can see comments like from Joanna here, hello from Fargo, awesome. This relates obviously to the question, where's the official chat? The chat's going to be integrated across all your platforms. So if you're in YouTube, you're in LinkedIn, you're in Facebook, whatever, all those get aggregated into one location. So don't worry, we see them all, and let us know if you have any questions at any point in time. Obviously, Steve enjoyed the recorder moment in the previous video, which is awesome to see. And so if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. We'd love to know more. Joanna here included a link here for more information about Platform Hub if you're all curious. So awesome stuff. All right, jumping back to the schedule here, you can see we got our release party, and then we're going to have a short break. So stay through until the end of the release party, and then we'll have a quick 5-minute break. And then we've got folks like Bob and Costas doing sessions, which is going to be awesome. So next up, we've got the 2025 release party, and let's go ahead and kick that off now. Hello, everyone from another place and time. My name is John Bristow. Thanks for joining us. We are part of SHIPPED. This is the 2025.4 release party. Hooray! And this is basically a celebration of all the features that we've shipped as part of 2025.4. If you go to octopus.com/what's new, you're going to see a page that looks like this. This is a summary of all the new features we've shipped in Octopus Cloud and the latest features and highlights of our 2025.4 release, which we shipped just a few days ago. So we've got a lot of stuff in here, and to help us celebrate and talk about this, I've got a number of folks from the team. This isn't everyone, so don't worry, this isn't the entire team. We've got Akira, we've got Harriet, we've got Kit, we have Ships, we have Jin. These are folks who are bringing you all these lovely features and more, and they're here to help talk about this. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to be here. This is, I think, our third release party that we've done. And this is basically to try and educate folks about what's shipped, what's available if you're an Octopus customer today, or perhaps you're interested about Octopus. Maybe you've listened to other people talk about Octopus in the office and, hey, we should start using Octopus. And you're curious about what's latest and greatest. This is the webinar for you. So to kick things off, we'll just start with the What's New page. So as I said before, you can go to /What's New. You can also go to our roadmap. I make the joke all the time, but make this your bookmark. Make it a bookmark, if not your homepage. This is at roadmap.octopus.com. And there you'll see a page that looks like this. Not only do we have our section of released features, which also coincides with our What's New, but we also have things like planned features and features that are possibly under construction. And you can also submit your own ideas as well by clicking this big blue button at the top. You can submit your ideas for features if you're so inclined. So this is roadmap.octopus.com. Live it, love it, use it. It's a great feature that we are using for all of our customers. But anyways, I digress. To kick things off, we'll go ahead and go around the table here, so to speak. So who would like to start off with a feature? Obviously, we can have a little competition here, but is there a feature that anyone would like to start talking about? Harriet, I'm looking at you because we just recently did a webinar about ephemeral environments. Did you want to talk about ephemeral environments at all?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I'm happy to kick us off.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me just the power of software. We'll go ahead and bring up your slides there.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, as John said, I'm Harriet, one of the product managers here at Octopus. The team that I am in kind of works towards focusing on our developers that use or application engineers that are using Octopus, so making it kind of easy for you to do your job. And so part of that was one of the big problems that we hear a lot, which I'm hoping resonates with many of you, is the whole but it worked on my machine. And you've done your change, you've done it in your local branch, and then you've gone and merged it in, and all of a sudden it's not working. And so we wanted to fix that problem. And so with that, we built ephemeral environments, which running joke within, especially my team, is that this is a really hard word to say and spell. So if you don't know how to say and spell that, that is fine. Basically what it means is environments that spin up and tear down as and when you need them. And so basically what this is solving here is you can spin up a test environment based on a pull request or however you're doing it from your local branch or your feature branch, and then get that reviewed. So it kind of also brings in people like myself who are not technical or are designers, gives them an opportunity to see the change live before it's merged, and then giving you the confidence that when you merge it, hopefully everything doesn't fall apart, and kind of gives you a little bit more confidence that it's not going to come back to you that something's wrong. So this was a really cool feature to build, actually, and we went through so many different conversations of what the best sort of version of this was. This is what we've started with. It doesn't mean it's the end of ephemeral environments, but yeah, we're really excited to see how this works in everyone's instances, and if it helps solve this problem that we always hear, and hopefully it can sort of become a thing of the past.
Yeah, I love ephemeral environments. It reminds me of like dandelion spores. They just float away on the breeze, and they go away after a while. But it's a great way of actually doing development, because you can spin up these environments really quickly, test your changes, and then they just tear down. And they leverage runbooks, which is a first-class citizen in Octopus. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so runbooks are used to help provision and deprovision the infrastructure that you're using for your environments. So we kind of wanted to build on top of existing features within Octopus, because we wanted to provide some sort of familiarity with what's going on instead of everything's new. So runbooks felt like a really good way of doing that. That said, though, if you're not provisioning infrastructure that way, that's fine. You don't need to use runbooks. It's completely optional. But it is a really quick and easy way to kind of add them in there, and yeah, have that infrastructure spun up for you based on your environments that you have, so that they're all kind of the same.
Awesome. Did you want to do a quick demo of this? I can spin up my environment here if you'd like, and we can take a look at this. Awesome.
Sure.
All right.
If you're prepared.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So here we are inside of Octopus. I like dark mode. If you like light mode, that's fine. I prefer dark mode, but there you go. So this is our environments section where you can add new environments. And you'll notice we have this new option now to spin up what's called a parent environment. What's this all about?
Yeah, so a parent environment is the one new concept that we've brought in. And the idea behind the parent environment is it's used purely for scoping, targets, permissions, all of that for your ephemeral environment. So it acts almost as though it's the shell of what you're expecting your ephemeral environment to copy from.
Right.
So you can't actually deploy to it. So I think that's a really big thing that, especially during alpha, got a little bit confusing when we had some customers using it. So
Yes.
yeah, if you take away anything, is that this is not what you're deploying to. You're deploying to the ephemeral environment that's spun up from based off what's the parent environment.
So the parent environment it's got all the I guess the variables. It's got this automatic deprovisioning aspect to it as well. So if you see these are sort of the telltale signs that you're dealing with a parent environment and you cannot deploy to it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And the kind of allows you to scope the way you want it and make sure that it's in a state that you're expecting it to be in.
Awesome. So the idea here is that I'll set up my environments, and you can see here I have a number of environments defined. I have development, staging, production. I got this new one that I just created just as a show too. But you'll also notice we have these different icons that represent obviously the type of environment where they are. So this is a normal environment, and this is a parent environment here. And you can see here that we can spin up these test environments for us to deploy to. So you can see we have a Kubernetes-based environment here that is a polling tentacle, which is obviously talking to this endpoint to this endpoint, and we can talk to that for doing ephemeral deployments. And so if we jump back into our environment here, let me jump into a project. Let's take a look at project here. You can see this is the project that you may have seen this if you watched our webinar. Jeff did a really good job of showcasing this. I just wanted to showcase an example of what this might look like when you spin up these environments. Obviously, we have things like live object status here, which is awesome. Huge fan of this. This basically shows you the state of all your pods and your replica sets. And I know, Kit, you've talked about this in great detail, so that's cool. But we can take a look at a release here, for example, and you can see that the ephemeral environment will live as part of this release when deployed, and we'll be able to actually reference that instance. And now you'll notice here, we actually get this endpoint that we can take a look at. So Harriet, what's this all about? We've got this endpoint we can touch. This is an ephemeral environment.
Yeah, so basically what that will do is if you go in there, it will bring up your ephemeral environment. And there, you'll see your change.
2000, so, awesome.
Yeah, so this is something that we built just to be able to play around with. So there's many demos that we've got out in the world at the moment. So you'll see the many times that Jeff changes that to pink because it's my favorite color. So yeah, it gives you, that's kind of where it's logged for you to be able to see the change that you've made.
Awesome. And you can also take a look at your ephemeral environments here listed if you had any, and you can also take a look at the settings associated with this as well. So you can see here for this project, I have a parent environment set up as test environments. My channel that I'm associated with is called test environments. And I also, as Harriet was indicating, I have my runbooks for provisioning and deprovisioning. So this is really cool. I can actually see the setup scripts for setting up my ephemeral environment and then tearing it down. Great. One question that obviously comes up a lot is, can I use this with other CI processes like GitHub, for example?
Yes, GitHub is definitely, we've got actually got a first class GitHub web action that has just, sorry, that's not what I mean, a GitHub action that has just gone public. So that is to help with the provisioning and deprovisioning of the ephemeral environments that you can use. So if you just want to do it in GitHub, that's fine. You can also obviously do these in whatever sort of tools you're using. It's available. You can kind of spin them up and tear them down using Terraform through the CLI, however you kind of desire. But the GitHub action is definitely what we would suggest having a look at and using, because it will make this process so much faster and simpler for you.
That's awesome stuff. And yeah, obviously, if you're a developer who cares about testing and in a production-like manner, meaning they want to see the environment spin up and then track changes, maybe run some, obviously, some test scripts, etc., maybe ephemeral environments might be for you. Is there anything else you want to tell us about ephemeral environments, Harriet, as part of this latest release?
There's probably one more thing, which is obviously it's really easy to show it in this state when we've already kind of played around with it. When you're getting started for the very first time, we do have basically a wizard that will walk you through the different steps. So a lot of this you don't necessarily have to set up yourself. So apart from the runbooks, which you might want to set up in beforehand, it will, this won't let you do it because it's already got the, it's already been set up. But if you, basically, if you're starting from scratch, it will create the channel for you. So we're using a channel just to separate both your standard production deployments and ephemeral deployments. And then, so it will create parent environment for you as well. And it will do that all in the background. It applies the auto deprovisioning rules. You've got a runbook to attach. You can attach it at that time. If you don't, you can go away and create one and come back. And then once you hit save at the end, it will be all set up for you. So it's pretty magical. So you don't necessarily need to go into every different element of the product itself. Yeah, so
awesome.
There's a really cool way to set up as well if it's just a little bit complicated at the start.
Yeah, if you want to check out, you can check out the recording of the ephemeral environments. We have the webinar recording available at /webinars. So you can see Harriet and Jeff do a much more thorough demo than I did, obviously. We're just trying to, we're trying to paint within the lines here, sort of thing. So you can watch that at /webinars if you're so inclined. Awesome stuff, Harriet. Thank you so much. Jumping back to the What's New page, you can see we got lots of features. Who would like to go next? Who would like to talk about something that's latest and greatest inside of Octopus 2025.4?
We can go.
Crowd goes silent. All right, who's next?
We're happy to chat. We can chat.
All right, go ahead.
Great. Okay,
right, so Jen, introduce yourself. You're a relatively new employee at Octopus. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a newbie. This is my second month at Octopus now. So I'm the product manager for the AI Foundations team with
Okay.
Akira here. And
Nice.
our remit is really about how do we superpower Octopus's core mission with AI capabilities. So how do we actually improve what we have on our core kind of value to market with AI, and then what new value can we also create on top of that? So it's pretty exciting. It's a good time to be at Octopus in this space, and there's a lot of really good investment there and a lot of good brains on this one. So it's exciting.
Yeah, looking at our docs here, we have some new nodes in here. So I know that folks have heard about the AI Assistant, which is a Chrome extension to help give you some guidance about your development processes, etc. We have our MCP, which you can find up on GitHub as well. We also have a new thing here called the Recovery Agent. Give us a synopsis of everything that you guys are looking at in terms of our AI strategy.
Yeah, so in terms of our AI strategy, we are looking at, like I mentioned, how do we superpower Octopus's core mission, and then also what new value can we take to market. So we've got these really brilliant capabilities that have just come to market, like Ship's team have been doing, the platform hub. So what platform hub? So what does it look like to supercharge the platform hub and all those new capabilities there with AI around best practice, for example, is something we're going to be looking at, best practice analysis, compliance adherence, and those kind of things that AI can really help look across, for example, the platform view and surface up to the top what's going well, what's not going well, and how do we really inform new people, for example, around onboarding, or even just surface things like where our deployment's drifting from how we should be doing things. How can we use AI to get all of that information, surface it to the top, and equip our users to, improve their compliance, improve their deployments.
So you guys have been busy. You've been shipping a lot. We've got, as I said before, our MCP server. We've got our deployment failure analyzer, which is part of AI Assistant anyway. Prompt-based project creation, and then best practices advisor as well. There's some new things that you guys have obviously built as well. Are there any demos you'd like to show, Akira?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's switch over to you.
Let's have a look at the recovery agent. So just to, as an example here, I created a project that will print a free, it's just a bash script for now. So it's just printing a bunch of variables in here. And let's have a look at a release and see how it's deploying. So just to speed things up, I created a release already and click on deploy. And the deployment failed, but it just says pretty much
exit code 2. I know that one very well.
Like, what is exit code 2, right? Like, so
yes.
It's not clear on top of our head, so we can just use the recovery agent, click on suggest a fix. And what's happening here behind the scenes is that we are using Azure OpenAI GPT to help us analyze the deployment log and to understand and clarify what happened and suggest a fix to the deployment process. So it is suggesting here to have a look at the missing quotes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so behind the scenes, we are using this Azure OpenAI GPT. We're sending not just the task log, but we're also sending the deployment process definition in there, and the OpenAI can come back to us and suggest, and we stream the response as it go. Yeah,
that's really cool. I like this feature a lot. I'll finally get some reasoning behind the errors of all my deployments now.
Yeah, it's quite handy. As you can see, like this, the quote that was missing here.
It's a demo. It's okay. People understand.
Yeah. it is, as when you look at the deployment process, it's really easy to miss some little details, but yeah, the recovery agent can make it much more clear.
So, Jim, this will only show up when there's an error. Is that right?
Yeah, the deployment, the recovery agent will only show up when there's an error, and then let's create a release in here. But we will show a button to fix the deployment, to suggest a fix. So we'll see this button here, suggest a fix, and then you can click, and that's when it kicks off.
Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this is a really good example for how we're thinking about AI, because our core kind of reason for being is to equip our customers to do successful complex deployments at scale. We know that for our customers, one of the most critical metrics they're looking at is that mean time to recovery. So when things do go wrong, how do you get back on track as fast as possible? And for us, we're being really problem driven and problem led rather than AI for AI's sake. But this is a perfect candidate because when things do fail, there's a lot of information that you could go and look at to try and understand what's going on. There's a lot you just spend a lot of time on. But it's a great candidate for AI, which can go through all that information, surface up in a really digestible format, stuff that matters. And you can definitely go through and look at in more detail if you want that information, you want to inspect it yourself, that's all there. But this just surfaces that so that you can quickly understand what's going on and then quickly recover, getting back to that mean time to recovery metric. And the cool thing is, so this is us stepping into the agent space. Currently, it's just a diagnostic tool, so it's just telling you what went wrong and suggesting a fix. But we'll be looking at then what's next. Obviously, how do we act back on the system? So what does it then look like for an agent to go and take those remediation steps? And what does it look, tackling really important questions like what does it look like to have the right level of human in the loop there? What does it look like to have the right level of information available, logging and things like that? So this is just version 1 of the recovery agent. It's something we're going to be evolving and really taking us into, again, answering some of our core problems, but really superpowering that with AI.
That's awesome. And speaking of agents, obviously, there's this latest blog post from GitHub where they were talking about the announcements they made around custom agents. We were mentioned as one of the partners for this. And so this is really exciting stuff. Like you can create release notes as part of this. And this is one example of some of the things you can do around agentic AI. This is awesome stuff, Jen. Like you guys are really cooking with gas here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great time to be in this space. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of, we have this dedicated team, but there's a lot of smarts around the entire Octopus team on opportunities that we can apply these capabilities to. And we're getting really good investment and focus from the business. So, 2026 is going to be a big year for us in this space. So keep your eyes peeled.
So we're called out here as the release notes agent. So at one point I'm like, is there a product called release notes? I don't think so, but that's just the name that we've given that. So awesome stuff. Was there anything else we wanted to mention on the AI front before we move over to other things?
I would just say the last one on this this is currently only available to cloud customers. It's rolling out to GA release this week. So all of our cloud customers, that would be the last sort of caveat on that one. So we haven't yet got anything in for in the roadmap for our server customers, but that's something that we're looking at in the new year.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Akira. Thanks, Jen. Awesome stuff. We've got ephemeral environments covered. We've covered AI. What else should we cover? Like, it's just getting, the list gets going stronger and stronger. Ships, did you want to talk a little bit about Platform Hub?
Yeah, that sounds great. So as some of you may already know, we've been investing in Platform Hub. It's a space where platform teams and platform engineers can go and scale best practices and delivery across their organization in a safe manner. So it's last quarter we released our first ever feature in that space, which is process templates. And this quarter, that's now available to all of our customers, including self-hosted and cloud. All of our enterprise customers have Platform Hub available. And we've released another feature called policies this year as well. This quarter as well. So I can definitely dive in. But first, let's just talk about the problems these solve, right?
Yes.
So we've, over the last couple of years, we've been speaking to many platform teams. And I think the biggest pain point is that they want to scale, but not slow down developers and compromise on speed, flexibility, and autonomy. And often teams create these golden paths, but that usually comes at the cost of just having full control with the platform team, and then they become the bottlenecks. So we really believe that platform teams should be force multipliers and not bottlenecks. And so I think templates, process templates specifically, allow you to then build these building blocks and Lego blocks that go into your deployment pipelines and work great, not just on day 1, but on day 300 as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the point of templating with process templates. And this quarter we've released policies which actually help you shift compliance left. It helps you enforce some of these templating and best practices as early as possible into your CI/CD pipelines. And they work great in combination with templates, but also without them. So you can enforce steps, you can verify packages come from relevant branches, and a few other capabilities.
That's awesome. So the way I like to think of templates is they're sort of like a reproducible set of steps that you can use in your deployment process, just getting down the brass tacks. And then policies are enforcement layers where we'll check to see whether or not you're doing things correctly. So it's kind of like guardrails in a sense.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's funny you bring up guardrails. This, originally we started thinking about these as blueprints and guardrails, and then eventually, the features shaped up to be templates and policies.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. So did you want to show us a little demo or kind of talk a little bit about what's new?
Yeah, let's jump in. So with process templates, so this is, firstly, I just want to highlight, I'm in a new area of the product called Platform Hub. In there, we have process templates. And here's an example of a process template which deploys an Azure web app. It asks for, that has a bunch of steps, manual intervention, running Terraform, send a notification. And it has a bunch of parameters that app team can then use to customize it. So I'll jump over to a project that's using it. So this is our standard project view. In here, if we jump in, my process currently uses this process template. And as app team, I don't really have to worry about, what the steps are. I can just specify the parameters, save, and start creating a release.
So one thing I'm noticing, there's a strong line around that series of step templates there. So that's indicating to me that's sort of like a fence ring in a sense. It's like you can't change this. This is a template that you have to use as part of this deployment process.
Correct, exactly. So we've sort of made some UI UX improvements to make that super clear that this template cannot be edited by your application team. So it's given to them that you have to use it as is. They can only customize it using these parameters.
Right.
And if we jump into the settings, you'll see also what version of the template I'm currently using.
Right.
And also whether I'm happy to accept minor changes or patch changes when there are updates made to this template automatically.
Yeah, this is cool. So you can actually version these things and then issue them out as people are using them.
Exactly. And so this is where, that whole problem of like drifting across your templates gets solved, because what we found was a lot of teams would create these templates day 1, but then keeping them evolving with best practices as new compliance requirements come through or security requirements come through was really hard. And rolling out new changes to templates was really hard. So, we've built that first class. So making, rolling out changes to your template and maintaining them over, months and years is actually a breeze.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah, so that's kind of how process templates work. And with this release, there's a bunch of UI UX improvements, but I think the biggest one to call out is before last quarter, we were only supporting built-in steps as part of templates. Now we actually support custom step templates and community step templates as well.
Awesome. This is so exciting.
Yeah. All right, cool. The real power, like I said, comes in when we publish it. So that's what I'll do. I'll just add a new parameter to show you a quick demo.
Loving the design changes here, by the way. This is awesome.
It looks really polished and modern, doesn't it?
Yes. I know we say that like we're surprised ourselves. But the design team is doing such a good job. It makes us look so good.
Yeah, so when you specify a parameter, you can also specify a default value here, and
Cool.
it can be optional. So I can just do a quick commit, publish it out. I'll publish it as a minor change, so it gets rolled out automatically because the
Nice.
template doesn't actually break the deployment process itself. And then that gets published out. Go back here.
So the thing that people have to remember here as Ships is switching tabs here is that you're moving from, say, I'm the author of the template to now I'm the consumer of the template.
That's right. So as a consumer, I just refreshed my deployment process, and you can see the new parameter just showed up. I can go and change the value, save, and go create a release. Really ready to go.
Fantastic.
Cool. Okay, so let's jump into policies, because that's the new shiny thing this quarter. So I've created a policy that says for all releases, that all projects that have demo in them, in this case, and are in my space, please ensure that the process template of Azure, the process template we were just seeing, is actually in the process, in the deployments, and is not being skipped and is being enabled. So what this means is I'm checking the process template's actually there in the process, and if it's not there, I will actually block the deployment from happening.
So let's just stop for a second here, because I just want to clarify. This is a language called Rego, and this is used predominantly in, Rego, excuse me. Sorry, you're right. Rego, and it's very popular with, obviously, folks who ascribe to the Open Policy Agent, or OPA, and this is the way in which you define policies.
That's right. It's become the the standard language in which you define and use policies. And so we've brought in a policy engine that goes and processes these across deployments in Octopus. And you can easily define these using Open Policy Agent as well. All right, so this gives us the superpower of enforcing those guardrails that we were speaking about earlier. And in this case, it says that the process template must be of version 2 or more. So in this use case is where you've upgraded your process template, but you want to ensure that all the app teams now use the latest version, and there might be some breaking changes in there for which they have to do some work to provide possibly a new parameter. And so this sort of policy will help you enforce that going forward, app teams must use the latest version. So this is already saved. What I'll do instead, so the older version doesn't enforce that. This new version enforces that. So I will just go enable this one instead, this new version.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, so the new version of policy that checks for the process template version being used is now enabled. Now remember, we're still using a 1.1 version here. So if I create a release and, hope to the demo gods this works, and deploy it to development, this should hopefully fail. Yes, perfect. Oh, I see the recovery agent. I won't try that at the moment.
Little callback. I like it.
Yeah, but how convenient. But right now it says it does not comply with the latest policy, which is what I've just applied to this.
We're gonna have product teams fighting each other for supremacy now. I love it. So there you go. The recovery agent will fix the problem. The policy agent will do something different. There you go.
Yeah. So in this way, you can not just enforce process templates, you can enforce any kind of steps you want. So if there is a step that, maybe you have a requirement that you must have an approval before a deployment happens, you can enforce that step's present at the beginning of every deployment process across all your spaces. And the good thing about all of this is all of this actually gets logged in the audit log. So
nice.
You can, so you can go back into your audit log, if I can find it.
I think that's at the root level, but it's under tasks. You got a bunch of logs and a variety of So
yeah.
there's your audit log.
Yeah. So here's our audit log, and you can start to see that the recent violation has been logged where my project was not complying. So you can use this to go at the end of the year, or every year or quarter, whenever the auditors come knocking at your door. It's like, hey, we've got a log of which teams are following our best practice and compliance, and you have got the evidence to show for it.
So instead of Git blame, it's now policy violation blame, which is awesome. So there you go. Ships has showed us not only an update on some of the changes I've gone with templates, but also the new feature, which is policies. That's awesome. Well done. That's a great release. Anyways, Kit, I know lastly but not leastly, I mean, we have a lot of stuff mentioning. We've got we've talked about AI, we've talked about a bunch of things. Obviously on the Kubernetes Argo side, there's lots of stuff that we ship there. So we now have obviously our Argo integration along with our support for Kubernetes with features in the Kubernetes agent. What did you want to show us as part of the release party here today?
Yeah, it was a big quarter for Kubernetes and Octopus, and we shipped 3 things that are now available on both cloud and on-prem. So let's talk starting from smallish and going to the big Argo CD and Octopus thing. So first and foremost, we all know, hopefully, that Octopus has a Kubernetes agent. And the agent is a big change in the Kubernetes game, released more than a year ago, and now it's the most popular default way to deploy to Kubernetes in Octopus. And this is a way how you can connect to the cluster without exposing your cluster API and basically making this the most secure and less invasive way of deployment, because you also need you don't need workers, and agent does all the deployments, all the security, secret management operations just within your cluster. So it's a very safe environment. So it's been there for quite some time. It's been used heavily. And what we heard from the most advanced customers is, hey, we really want to get one way further and just allow people not just to control, because you can control Kubernetes agent with a lot of permissions in Kubernetes cluster. You can make it very granular and define what it can do. But what people want is they want to control what each team or each project can do on the cluster through the Kubernetes agent. Like, for example, we have team number 1, and they own a few namespaces and a few applications. And we have a team B, and they work on different set of applications within the same cluster. This is a common scenario for many customers. And we want to completely avoid any situation then team number one can actually influence or impact and change anything that wasn't meant for them to change. Maybe it was deployed by another team or deployed by infrastructure team. With the new agent, you can actually do it all in Octopus, and the beauty of that, you don't need to configure it on the Octopus side. You can use Kubernetes built-in airbag mechanisms to achieve that. So basically, then agent now runs the deployment with this advanced setting. Agent will look into Kubernetes permissions, follow them, regardless of what agent can do. It will limit the particular deployment to the scope that your admins provided. And this is actually quite powerful if you want to go into this deep compliance and audit rules, and you really want to follow and ensure that there is no way you can do something wrong. You basically can protect in the best possible way the cluster from Octopus in a way, right? So even if you have admin permission Octopus, this is the last level of defense. Yeah, so it's now available for all customers. We strongly encourage people to try it, give us feedback. It's a very technical product, but yes, the people who know they need it, they know how to use it. So the next thing which we want to share today is Kubernetes Live Object Status. Again, it's a new thing. It's been released earlier this year, and for now, more than 100 customers use it every day. Just in case, if you can share my screen, John.
Yep. There you go.
This is our samples instance, and what the live status does, it does this beautiful transformation. So the dashboard now is live. If you deploy into Kubernetes, you can see the health and the state of your apps right here on one screen, as mentioned earlier, and get all the information you need to debug, troubleshoot, understand the health state of it. So in September this year, we released this feature for on-prem customers. With one unfortunate exception, live object status wasn't available for HA instances. So if you run more than one instance and for scalability, you couldn't use the feature. From now
just
on,
for folks,
with the new release,
sorry to interrupt, Kit. Just for folks, HA, high availability, folks who are running Octopus in a cluster environment.
Yeah, and so now it's not an issue anymore. So if you run HA mode in Octopus for self-hosted, you can use it. So now it's fully available for every customer, and we saw already like a spike of adoption. So yep, if you use HA, you haven't had access to this feature yet. Now it's the time, update the Octopus and just start using it. It's great and it helps a lot. Finally, probably the biggest thing we released so far in this quarter is Argo CD in Octopus. So as people know, Argo CD in Octopus is one of the default ways to deploy to Kubernetes. It's the GitOps engine. It allows you to sync manifests and gives you beautiful UI. What it doesn't do, though, it doesn't actually allow you to automate your deployment of your software delivery cycle. So people usually solve that with some other tools, or according to the recent survey we did, half of people still do it manually. So you literally change manifest in Git every time you want to promote changes from.
Wait. Half of them do it manually?
Yeah, we asked people about what techniques you do, and about half of them said, yeah, we also still do it somewhat manually.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that works if you have 5 apps, maybe still okay if you have 10. If you have 30, 50, of 100, that's definitely a bad idea. But it's really hard to do if the tool doesn't give you this out of the box. So a lot of people go into also build it yourself automation with a bunch of scripts running on Jenkins or GitHub Actions. This is by far the most popular way of doing this. And it also has a lot of features like it doesn't scale, for example. So we saw a lot of people actually using Octopus for Argo CD even before we introduced the feature last year or earlier this year. And we realized that, hey, actually, there is definite value in combining the power of Octopus as its de-orchestration engine and the power of Argo, that's like a great GitOps engine with nice UI features and live observability. So we introduced Argo CD in Octopus. In a nutshell, what it does, Octopus can now treat Argo CD and updates for Argo CD manifest as one of deployment steps. I have a few steps here on the screen, a few projects here on the screen. Let's just look into one of them as a reference. It's a very simple example, of course. We didn't want to make it complicated for the sake of a demo, but this is something that a customer would really do in Octopus. So what we see here, we see Argo embedded in the typical process we have. It's hey, first of all, let's approve a deployment. And this is manual in Octopus. Yes, some people still click, and it's not a bad idea for production. An approval button if you want to run a deployment. And then, yeah, we need to update the Argo app and ensure that the new version is actually running on the cluster. This is pure GitOps method, although it's embedded in the CD process. And then when the app is updated, we want to run a smoke test because, hey, we don't want to do it manually, and why not to just add it to the process? And then if we have any issues, we will inform our team that something failed so they can quickly take a look and fix it. And at the very end, we want to also scan for vulnerabilities. So all of those steps are now combined, sequenced, and you can control them from one place. And you don't need to, if you're a developer, you need to think about it. You just run it. It's actually run automatically if you deploy, upload the new container, and it's just there for you. And if something fails, you go in one place, see all the results, and know what happened.
And then, Jen, you can use the recovery agent possibly to see what happened.
You can use recovery agent for that. And you can use the template, to create this.
Exactly. Templating and making the approval mandatory at the beginning.
Love it.
You see where it's all going, right? It's all working together. And finally, of course, you can use live states with it too. So all this application is also live. You can open an app and go into it, dive into all the deployed resources and the child resources, and go into drawers, understand what's going on, how the manifest looks. If there is a diff, you can see the diff. explore logs, events, and everything else. So all of that is going right through Argo. You can see the health and sync status on one screen, and obviously on all the apps across all the environments. How can you use it? Just find this new tab in the infrastructure section, and yeah, just click this green button and connect to your Argo CD instance. As soon as you've done that, you'll see all your apps available on this beautiful screen. And with the simple annotation, you can map your Argo app to Octopus and start your deployments. Takes about 10 minutes. Just, yeah, try it out. And this feature is available on cloud and also available for all self-hosted customers, still early access. So we're looking for feedback. We have a bunch of ways to tell us what you think, use a roadmap, use the in-product build and feedback form, chat to us, and yeah, really looking forward to learn how people use it. And we'll make it better.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So we've gone in total, just to recap everything, you've seen a lot. So we started with Harriet, ephemeral environments, talked about all this as part of the what's new set of features. We then talked about our AI capabilities with Jin and Akira, talking about the recovery agent, talking about the AI assistant, talking about our MCP server. Then we then talked about our blueprints and guardrails, aka our policies and templates. And then we wrapped up with Kit talking obviously about Argo CD support, our improved Kubernetes agent around RBAC controls, etc. All of this and more, of course, you can find on our What's New page. And folks, that wraps up the 2025.4 release party. Are there any final parting words? Obviously, you guys are all looking for feedback. Is that the sort of general one thing that you guys all want to share with our customers?
Use it all together. Combine those things together.
Yeah, combine the powers that have been bestowed, right?
Awesome. So obviously there's the What's New page. There's also the roadmap. As I always jokingly say, make it your homepage, if not a bookmark. Submit a feature, submit an idea that you'd like to see. I know that these folks and more are always listening. Any final words before we wrap up? Awesome. It's not often you get product managers and developers not wanting to talk a lot about their features, but I guess we've exhausted the topic, so we'll wrap things up there. Anyways, on behalf of myself, Harriet, Akira, Jin, Ships, Kit, and everyone else at Octopus Deploy, we hope you enjoyed 2025.4. Make sure to tell your friends to download. Yes? Was there something else? All right, never mind. Make sure to tell your friends, your family to download and install 2025.4. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And on behalf of all of us here, happy deployments. All right, awesome stuff. Always great to see a summary of the latest and greatest features in 2025.4. Great stuff. I love it. I love the latest features. I could discuss it all day. Just getting back to our schedule now. So you can see here we've got a few sessions coming up shortly after our break, which we're about to get to. But before we get to our break, I just wanted to take a moment here and answer a few questions that came in. Remember, we are monitoring your questions. So one of the questions that came in here from Zygote846. Hello, is Recovery Agent available for the self-hold server? And is it possible to configure Claude with something, maybe something like AWS Bedrock? And I believe that there was a similar question to this, is it possible to utilize on a self-hosted version? Would it be possible to utilize another LLM such as Claude or Olama? Unfortunately, I guess if you're looking at it that way, right now self-hosted is not a scenario for that, but it is something that they're looking forward to. You saw or you heard Jin talk about this during the video there, where it is something that we'll look forward into 2026, and so there will be some interesting things that are happening there, which is great. Some great comments here. Joanna says, I love the idea of using AI to create release notes. Absolutely. Good stuff. Great to see. Joanna also highlighted here the What's New page. This is one of the many places you can go. It's funny, you talk to customers a lot of times, they don't realize that there's a roadmap or a What's New page, and it's constantly populated with great stuff. So make sure to check those out. Steve says he loves those demos. Super exciting stuff. I absolutely agree. All right, let's jump back to our roadmap now. Let's take a look at what's coming up next. So coming up next, we've got the one and only Bob Walker is going to take us through progressive deliveries to Kubernetes using canary deployments and feature flags. And then we've got Costas shortly thereafter talking about scaling Argo CD for the enterprise. And then before the next break, we've got Jim talking about from zero to continuous assurance, how Octopus Deploy automates trust and compliance at scale. All right. Well, with that, we're going to take a short break as we've allocated here. So feel free to stretch your legs, get a glass of water, get a coffee, etc. We will be back here in approximately 5 minutes or so, and we'll have Bob talking about progressive delivery using canary deployments and feature flags. right, let's go ahead and bring Bob to the stage. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
You know, it's 1:30 in the morning here, but that's okay. I got plenty of coffee in me, so we're good.
Awesome. Sorry, I needed. I didn't realize my speakers were coming out of my.
Oh, that's okay.
monitor.
That's why we decided to start a little bit early. We're just going to do a little bit of back and forth. This is just helping Bob get ready for his presentation. We'll definitely kick off at 40 minutes past the hour, but how's everything looking on your end?
Pretty good. I'm in a weird echo for my own headphones. That's weird.
Okay. It might be my mic, so I'll mute and should probably go away after this is done. So apologies for that. Anyways, I'll queue up your slides here, and oh, cool, nice. You even queued it. Look at that, the QR code and everything.
I
That's
know.
awesome.
It's almost like I'm a professional.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll introduce Bob here quickly. He's our field CTO here at Octopus Deploy. Bob, speaks at pretty much every major event that we go to, GitHub Universe, KubeCon, etc. If he's not speaking at an event, he's talking to customers. He's giving presentations online. I know I've wrangled him into a number of webinars. Thank you again for doing those, Bob. And this is just yet another example of Bob going above and beyond, helping you out here with Ship. So anyways, Bob's going to deliver he's going to ship a presentation here, how we progressively deliver changes to Kubernetes using Canary deployments and feature flags. And Bob, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here, get a chance to talk to you about how we as a company progressively deliver changes to Octopus Cloud, which is hosted on Kubernetes using Canary deployments and feature flags. Now, one of the funny things about that is a really big mouthful. So I do apologize for how long the title is, but hopefully you're going to find some use out of this particular talk. Make sure I got everything. All right, ready to go. Now, before I jump into the talk itself, John did give a brief intro as to who I am and my job title and everything along those lines. I only have a set amount of time to actually do this particular presentation. So if you do wish to contact me afterwards, please feel free to do so. You can see all my contact information up there. You can also see the QR code that will send you to my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat with you before or after. Now, unlike John, I am coming to you from Omaha, from my home office in Omaha. So it is only 9:40 for me. So thankfully, it's a really reasonable time, which I appreciate. I have nothing but sympathy for John for having to be up this late for any of that. I live there with my wife, in case you're curious, and we don't have any kids, but we do have pets. We have a very crazy kitten, or kitty. She's 2 years old now. I guess she's not a kitten anymore, that loves to get into weird spots. This is her climbing on our drapes the other day. We also have a dog who loves to play with the cat and chase her around. And this is her actual favorite time of the year because it snows, and she loves running around the snow. She would sit in the snow and roll around the snow all day if I gave her a chance, which wouldn't be good for her, but she absolutely loves it. Now, in the summertime, when I'm not spending time with my wife or my pets, you're going to find me out on the bike. So if you've never been to Omaha, Nebraska, if you're curious about what it looks like, this was taken about 10 miles outside of one of the cities out in Nebraska. So as you can see, lots of open sky, lots of cornfields and trails. Now, in terms of my technical background, I started off as a developer back in the very, very, very early days of .NET. In fact, I remember being in a university lecture hall one Saturday morning, listening to a Microsoft representative go on and on about how great this brand new thing they're about ready to release called the Visual Studio. And this is before Visual Studio even had numbers associated with it. It was just called Visual Studio.NET, and they were super excited by it. Since then, I started off as a junior developer, just right out of college, didn't know anything, became that seasoned developer that just knew enough to be dangerous, became a lead developer, and then eventually an architect. Now, throughout my career, I eventually started falling in love with continuous delivery and all the problems that it solves, because I had to do deployments at 2 a.m. And through my journey of continuous delivery and being a developer, I came across Octopus Deploy. And when I was given a chance, I jumped right at it to join the company. Shameless self-promotion. I can't help myself. Some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about today, specifically around feature flags, trunk-based development, and so on and so forth, you can find in a white paper that I released this year. So if you go to that QR code, it'll take you right to that white paper, or you can just go to octopus.com/publications. So again, shameless self-promotion. I can't help myself. So let's get into the actual session itself. So what are the goals? What can you expect to learn from this particular session? So for the first one is, I want to help provide you solutions that you can apply in your day-to-day. Now, hopefully, your use case is fairly similar, and generally it should be. You're hosted on Kubernetes, maybe you have a SaaS platform or something similar, or you need to progressively deliver changes. I also want to debunk the myth that canary deployments means routing traffic. All too often, I go to conferences or I see these webinars where they'll just do a canary deployment and they'll say, I'm just going to route 10% of my traffic to this new version of my application, where in reality, that doesn't work all the time. And we'll get into the reasons why in just a second. And I also want to help illustrate why it's so important to separate the concept of deploying new code from releasing new functionality to our user base. And then finally, this is not a sales pitch of Octopus Deploy. I always have to throw this in here as my disclaimer. Although this is an Octopus Deploy conference, a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking to you about today, you can apply whether or not you use Octopus. Now, I hope you do use Octopus. I really do. But that being said, it's not a sales pitch. So let's go into the background and the context as to what problems we're looking to solve and why we opted to do these things. So as you may or may not know, Octopus Deploy is a self-hosted as well as a cloud offering in terms of what we offer to our customers. Now, what you may not know is that our self-hosted option existed years before our SaaS offering. We used to give customers an MSI that installed on their Windows machines, happy days, everything went well. But then as time went on, we'd hear from customers, it'd be great if you had a SaaS offering. It'd be great if you had a SaaS offering. And eventually in 2017, we heard enough of the, it reached kind of like that critical mass, and we made the decision, yes, we're going to have a SaaS offering. Now, because we have both a self-hosted option as well as a cloud offering, one of the key tenets that we have is we want to make sure it's still as easy as possible to set up in a self-hosted environment as it is easy to create something brand new in the cloud. All too often, like there's a SaaS offering we've seen from companies where the SaaS offering is super easy to get set up, but if you have to do self-hosted for company regulations or policies or any of those laws you have to deal with, you end up having to set up all of this infrastructure around the self-hosted option. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible. So with that being said, that also leads us to our architecture in terms of Octopus Cloud. Because what we decided was every customer gets a dedicated copy of the application, and we call that a cell. And so the reason why we call it a cell is think of like your human body, where you have cells of different sizes. Just like we have customers that use Octopus Deploy in different ways. We have some customers that do a few deployments a day, and that's perfectly fine. And we have other customers who do hundreds or even thousands of deployments per day. Now, as you can imagine, the customers that have to do thousands of deployments, they need a lot more compute resources than customers who do maybe a few dozen deployments. And so what this allows us to do with this cell-based architecture, where every customer gets a dedicated copy of the application, dedicated database, as well as dedicated file share, is we can adjust the compute resources to better match their use case. And the other reason why we did this is it also guarantees isolation and prevents the noisy neighbor. So when it comes to noisy neighbors, one of the biggest concerns we always have is what happens if one customer runs a query that blocks all of the other customers. In a case where everyone was sharing the same database or the same compute resources, that's entirely possible. In fact, I worked on an application where that did happen more times than I like to admit. And so by doing this, we prevented the noisy neighbor problem. The other reason why we made this decision was it also allowed us to short circuit so many of those conversations where is my data intermingled with my competitor and so on and so forth. So what this means, the reason why I'm telling you all of this is that we have over 1,600 customer instances hosted across 3 cloud regions in Octopus Cloud. Now, if you're curious about our Kubernetes configuration, we're hosting it on just a small handful of clusters when it's all said and done, which is pretty impressive. Each cluster can host about 300 to 500 instances, and it really depends on where the cluster is located. So the clusters that are located in Australia, for example, they don't have nearly as many customers as the ones that are located in the Americas, for example. And that's just common sense because there are a lot more people in America than there are in APAC. And the other thing that we've made the decision on is that the cloud customers will always get the latest features first. So I have a screenshot that's a little bit out of date, but it still illustrates the point that I wanted to make, which is cloud is always 1 quarter ahead of our self-hosted customers, meaning that as you can see here, we released the latest version, which at the time was 2025.2. We released that in February, but the self-hosted version didn't become available until June of this year. So you can see there's a pretty wide gulf. And what this does is it allows us to add new features and functionality. Okay, so let's talk about some of the self-inflicted challenges that we have. Now, one of the big challenges that we have is that we have 1,600 customer instances. And reasonably, customers would want us to keep those instances running when they need to do production deployments or when it's important to them. Now, when it's important to them is going to vary across every customer. Some customers, they're fine if their instance is upgraded in the middle of the day at lunchtime, whereas other customers like, no, wait until my nighttime or my 3 a.m. But each customer's 3 a.m. could be vastly different. So my 3 a.m. is vastly different than John's 3 a.m., for example. So as a result of that, if we look at when we allow customers to upgrade, or when they've told us when it's appropriate for customers to for us to upgrade them, excuse me, you can see this. This is what's illustrated in this particular chart. So this shows all of the instances along with their maintenance window. And as you can see, at no point do we ever have a situation where a customer isn't in a maintenance window throughout the entire day. And we made it super easy to configure because, again, this is something that we want to make useful to our customers. But we have a couple of challenges. I picked this screenshot in particular, although it is relatively old, but it still highlights the big point, which is that we can do multiple deploys per week. And the reason why I picked this particular screenshot is, in fact, we did multiple deploys per day, which can be really challenging when it takes 24 hours to, at the very least, to upgrade every single customer's instance. In addition to that, we're also releasing new features and functionality. We don't like to do big bang deployments when it comes to our Octopus Cloud customers, where we just release all of the features all at once, because that's more of a self-hosted approach. For our cloud customers, what we like to do is we like to release new features and functionality throughout the entire quarter when it becomes available and when we think it's ready for them. So one feature might be added at the very beginning of the quarter, or one feature might be added towards the end of the quarter for that particular release. Now, this required a complete mind shift for us when we went to our SaaS offering. So in the early days for our self-hosted customers, the upgrade cadence that we saw was it could take anywhere from a few weeks to several months before we kind of reached critical mass with our customer base in terms of when they upgraded. And so this was a very long tail, so to speak. And so typically what would happen is we would upgrade all of our staff instances, test everything out, and it looked good. And so we'd release it onto the world, and then it would take a period of time. Now, that completely changed when we went to SaaS. What used to take maybe even a month or two now became 24 hours, which is a big mind shift for us. And so one of the big things that we saw, especially at the very early days of SaaS, this is one of the biggest problems we ran into, which was we started upgrading, say, all of our instances at 10 a.m. Brisbane time, which is 12 a.m. UTC. And sometimes what would happen is a critical bug would be found. And at the time, especially at the very beginning of our SaaS offering, we continue upgrading all of the remaining instances. And that obviously wasn't an appropriate solution, but that's just something we ran into. And so I want to dive into our initial solution of how we solved this particular problem. The first thing that we ran into was we wanted to make sure that we prevented what we call show-stopping bugs from reaching all of our stable customers. And so we created canary deployments, or we had release rings. But it's the same core concept as a canary deployment, which the canary deployment, the idea is that you find a problem with a subset of customers or a subset of traffic or a subset of users, and then you stop and you either revert or you do some sort of action. But the idea being is you can minimize the impact that you have on your user base. And so what we did is we have our staff users, they're always upgraded as soon as possible. And then after a day, assuming the staff users didn't find anything, then we'd upgrade all of our insiders. And after another day after that, we'd upgrade all of our another 7 days after that, we'd update all of our early adopters. And then assuming the early adopters and the insiders and the staff didn't find any issues during another 7 days, then we'd upgrade all our stable customers. So what this meant, and this is pretty common for a lot of canary style deployments, which was it's not a few minutes when you're routing traffic. Oftentimes for us, it's multiple weeks. We're talking 2 weeks before a new version reached our production reached our stable customers. And we also needed a way to stop. in case an issue was found, even if we got all the way up to the stable ring, because again, it could take up to 24 hours. And so we looked around, and if you're familiar with the DevOps Handbook, as well as the Phoenix Project, as well as the Unicorn Project, they talk a lot about Toyota. And Toyota came up with what's known as the andon cord. And the andon cord sits above everybody's workstation. And anyone can pull that cord. And when they do pull that cord, it stops the assembly line. Now, the reason why Toyota did this is because they wanted to prevent a small problem that the assembly line worker can notice and say, this is going to be a problem, from becoming a catastrophe, which could involve a recall, image problems, any potential lawsuits. So this allowed them to do that. Now, this is a gross oversimplification of the andon cord. It's actually a lot more nuanced as to when it does actually stop the assembly line. But generally, that's the most important thing to know, is that when you pull the cord, anyone can pull it and stop the assembly line. And so what we started to do is we started treating our releases and our deployment pipeline like an assembly line, where we're always going forward. And we're always assuming that it's going to be successful. So we call it the enthusiastic promoter. So we just constantly treat it that way, as we're always pushing forward on something like that. But we need a mechanism to stop. And so we built the andon cord ourselves. It's an internal tool that we built. And this screenshot I took right off the user interface. And what we did is we created a sense of psychological safety. And that's the most important thing, is to have that sense of psychological safety to pull the cord to stop it from being released. And so we said, who can pull the cord? Anyone. Anyone can pull the cord. That means you. I've pulled the cord myself. I've pulled it a few times. And we have a list of pretty common criteria. You can't deploy, you can't edit or create runbook or deployment processes, can't edit or create releases, and so on and so forth. So we kind of provided a quick handy guide. But generally, if you're not sure, pull the cord. Because what this does is it allows us a chance to stop and research and make sure that, okay, if this is a big problem, it's a good thing we stopped it. Or if it's not a big problem, we just unpull the cord and it proceeds on with its merry day. And we'd much rather pull the cord and be wrong than not pull the cord and have something get out to production that causes even more problems. And as you can see, we've pulled the cord, when I took this screenshot, 549 times. So it's a fairly common occurrence. This isn't something that we're like, oh my gosh, only pull it in case of an emergency. No, it's like we will pull it fairly often. So what this looks like is that if a critical bug is reported, even when we get all the way up to our stable customers, we can stop upgrading all of the other instances, which was incredibly powerful for us. But while this worked really well, we started noticing some cracks after a short period of time. So I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but the big takeaway from here is one of the engineers noticed that in 2022, we had a period of time where it was 46 days between our last release to production and what was going to be promoted to production. Not only that, best case scenario, he's saying it's probably going to be another week, assuming no other further issues. So what this means is that although we had 15 days to kind of quote bake in the changes, what we were finding is even then it wasn't long enough. And we actually even got up to over 50 days in this particular case, which was just not acceptable, because you can't be a company that's trying to deliver value fast to your customers if it takes over 50 days to even make it all the way through a production rollout. So what went wrong? Why was this happening? The truth is that even if we waited until the very, very, very end, and there are a couple of customers that are in what we call the laggards ring, which they get upgraded at the very end for a variety of reasons, even then they were finding issues. And this highlights one of the core problems with canary deployments, which is that they're used as a way to de-risk new features and functionality. But in reality, they should be used as a way to de-risk whether or not a deployment will be successful or not. And what I mean by successful is I'm able to deploy it. I run all my database migration scripts. They all came back positive. I was able to run a series of very small tests. Everything looks good. The application is running. Okay, I've moved on. So that's the type of thing that a canary deployment can help you do, is they can help you de-risk whether or not the deployment will work. But it will not de-risk whether or not a new feature will work. Because the truth be told, as you can see here, is that even though we had 15 days to let code, quote unquote, bake in, it still didn't cover all the possible code paths. And this is one of the critical problems with canary deployments, is that even if you route a subset of traffic, let's say 10% of traffic or 15% of traffic, there's no guarantee it's going to cover every possible code path. And that was a big problem, because there's always going to be those use cases that you didn't think about, that happens, or it's a edge case that you thought was an edge case, but in fact was a much more common use case, or there could be any number of different things. It could be a performance issue, could be any number of those things like that. So when we looked at it, we started saying, okay, what's the number one reason for these show-stopping bugs? And it was new features and functionality. Now, I've been responsible for releasing what I thought was a bug fix that created even more bugs, but that's more of a rarity. That's an exception that kind of proves the rule. More often than not, new features are the reason for show-stopping bugs. So let's talk about solution V2. Where are we at today? So the first thing that we did is we shortened the release rings. You saw that we actually got rid of the insider release ring, as well as we changed around our canary deployments. So we have our staff instance, and the very first thing that we now upgrade is our main deploy instance. So we use Octopus Deploy to deploy Octopus Deploy. And that deploy instance, that main one, that's the very first thing that's upgraded. And that allows us to test it out, because if it doesn't work for us, it's definitely not going to work for our customers. We know that for a fact. And then at most, after 3 days, we will deploy to a random subset of instances. It's always rotated. It's always randomized. And again, this is at most. More often than not, it's actually about after a day, if I'm being completely honest. And then when it comes to our stable rings, then we'll upgrade all of our stable customers, and then finally we'll upgrade our laggards. But again, I'm talking like what you're seeing here is absolute worst case. More often than not, it's typically, now we're getting it pretty fast. Now it's down to about, I would say about less than a day, a couple days at most. But what about new features and functionality? So I want to highlight something that's really visible when it comes to new features and functionality to really illustrate this point. So this was our user interface at the start of 2024. And this was our user interface at the end of 2024. Now, as you can imagine, it was a pretty big change when we made this user interface change. There were a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that we simplified, we moved some things around. There's a big change overall. Now, in a traditional canary deployment, it's like, oh, I'll route a subset of traffic, or I'll have a randomized subset of customers who'll get this new feature. And that just doesn't work when it comes to big new features like this. Because could you imagine as a user, if this is what you saw when you signed in, like it looked like this, not exactly like this, but it looks similar to this. And then you sign off for lunch and you come back after lunch and the user interface looks like this. As a user, you're going to be pulling your hair out, because you're going to be like, what is going on? Why is this interface changing so often? Yes, this is a dramatic example, but the point is still holds. However, we needed to be able to get feedback before updating all of our users, because with new features and functionality, we want to make sure we're building something that's useful for our users. And if it's not, we need to know about it right away so we can adjust. Now, there's two schools of thought when it comes to how we're going to get feedback from our user base, specifically a subset of our users, ideally, because we want to make sure that this is going to work before just updating everybody. So the first school of thought is, let's go ahead and let's create a feature branch for those particular users. And that is an approach, but the big problem with that is those branches typically live for a significant amount of time. And we actually saw this happen within Octopus Deploy with one of our features, which was our Spaces feature that we released in 2019. That was being worked on for almost a year, if not a year. And when we merged it in, because it was in its own branch, and they were dutifully merging main into their branch whenever possible, but when they merged in their changes, it was it's an interesting time, to say the least. So having a feature branch and giving that to our users just wouldn't work. The other thing is we want to be able to let our users test the new feature in production. And there's often cases, where we are working on multiple features at any point in time. So this is where we started investigating feature toggles. And we built our own initially, but then after a while, we started looking around and we came across openfeature.dev. And if you're not familiar with openfeature.dev, what it is, it's a CNCF project, and it's a specification on how feature toggles should work. So what they do is they provide a specification, as well as they provide SDKs that plug into providers. And so your code, what it does is it interacts with the SDK. And then the SDK, that's what's going to interact with the provider. So your provider could be Feature Flags R Us. It could be not just Open Feature, sorry, Launch Darkly. It could be any number of those types of providers that are out there. Now, one of the benefits of Open Feature is that you can target a segment of users with a particular feature toggle. So it could be based on location, it could be based on a team, it could be based on usage history, whether or not a user signs up, any number of those things. And it's really up to the provider as well as your application to kind of define what those segments would end up looking like. Now, one of the other things that Open Feature also provides is a really robust lifecycle management when it comes to evaluating feature toggles. So it's incredibly robust when it comes down to it. Now, what does this look like when it comes to how we deploy? Well, the first thing that we do is we work on a new feature and we will incrementally build this over time. So think of a house. You don't just show up one day and build a house in one day. That's nigh on impossible. You have to dig out the foundation, lay the foundation, all these other things. So it's a period of time. It's a small series of changes that happen each day. And at the end of a few months, you're going to have a house. The same thing is true with how we work on our features. We will incrementally build features and functionality. And what we'll do initially is we will add them into our main branch. We'll merge them into the main branch, but they're hidden behind a feature toggle. And so what we'll do is we'll initially deploy with the flag turned off. And then eventually we'll kind of reach a point with the feature where we say, okay, we think it's ready for our staff users to start using. And so we'll turn it on for our staff users. Sometimes it's a subset of staff users. Most of the time it's for everybody. And what this will allow us to do is then we can start testing it out ourselves, start using it, start building up what does documents look like, what are best practices, what are the rough edges, any sort of those different types of things. And then once we kind of reach a good, then we'll turn it on for our early adopters. And the early adopters, they can opt in. Now, one of the benefits of this is that we actually had multiple early adopter programs running, especially at the beginning of the year, for multiple significant features, which is pretty cool. Now, the other really important thing is that we stop right here for sometimes weeks, if not months at a time. To give you an example of a time frame when it comes to this type of staff early adopters, Platform Hub, which we just released to the vast majority of all our enterprise customers this month, I had access to that dating back to February. That's how long we will have a feature toggle in there. And that's how long we will build out the feature and we'll test it and we'll make sure it's going to work. And we find all the sharp edges and so on and so forth. But then when it's ready for the rest of the users, not just the early adopters, that's what gives us the capability to then start enabling for the remaining users over a period of time. Now, one of the big advantages of this is that we can also pause rollouts when issues are discovered. So when we were rolling out the new user interface, for example, we had a couple of users report to us that, hey, we're running into problems. And when we run into problems, it gave us a chance to pause the rollout and start evaluating. Is this a common use case? How many people do we expect for this to be impacted? Or any number of those different things. And then in this particular case, we said, well, this actually only impacts a subset of our users. So we're going to go ahead to continue on to 100%, but we will exclude those other customers, the ones that are running into issues or we think will run into issues, until we resolve this particular issue. And so it kind of gives us this very kind of controlled way to roll it out. Now, it looks like it's controlled for every single feature, but depends on the feature. For, say, the new user interface, it was very regimented. I think it was like 5% of the time. We were rolling out just 5%, then 10, then 20, then 15, then 20, 25, 30, and so on and so forth. But for smaller features, it could just be 5%. It looks good. We're not seeing any big issues. Let's just push it out to 100%. Because it could be like you have to opt in for the feature or you have to configure it in some sort of way. And so in case you're wondering, this is what it would look like with our feature toggles. And in fact, this is within Octopus Deploy. We're starting to build this out there. So kind of giving a sneak peek as to what it could be. And so for us, our segments of what we do, it's specific tenants or specific customer instances. Now, this has had a number of big benefits for us. The first big one for us is this has had a noticeable impact on our uptime because we have separated the concept of deploying new code from releasing new functionality. So when we deploy new code, the chance of it going wrong is incredibly rare because anything that could potentially cause a problem, aka new features, well, those are hidden behind feature flags. And so our uptime when it comes to our Octopus Cloud customers is significantly higher than it's been in the past. In fact, you can see for several months we exceeded 99.99. I only blame last month. I blame October. I blame that on the Azure outage that occurred when I was at GitHub Universe. But so it has had a noticeable impact on our uptime. It's also had a noticeable impact on our lead time to changes. And this is actually a fairly old screenshot. And you can see that when we track this, and our goal is to get down to 1 day. But the biggest impact that it's had is this has been the thing that's unlocked for us trunk-based development. And this is what we've come to realize is that this is the best way to build new features and functionality, is that feature toggles allow you to do this. Because what you can do is you can incrementally build new features over a period of time. So again, instead of trying to build the entire feature, what you might do is first you might just say hey, we just want to add a new page. Let's add the page, put some basic layout on it. Okay. Now let's add a button onto that page and have the button maybe just do something really quick. Okay, now let's actually have the button do something. And so those are each check-ins and then merges into main, and then we push that up there. Now, the benefit of this is that it also means that when a bug is discovered, it's just the same workflow. It's done in a short-lived branch. It's merged right into main, and we can push it out there. And this is the idea being is that with trunk-based development, is you're making very small changes. And so your delta for each release is incredibly small. And yes, you might bundle up, say, several merges into main and deploy once a day. That's perfectly fine. But this really allows you to deploy once a day and know that, hey, the amount of changes that are going out are very, very, very small. And so the other advantage is that there's also less of a chance of having to roll back because, again, the delta is really small. But that's not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows because there's going to be remaining challenges with this. One of the big challenges that we have is mean time to recovery. Once we detect an issue, the time to fix is very quick. We can fix an issue, and our goal is under an hour. Again, with short-lived branches, that's completely possible. But the time to detect can range. Sometimes it could be 5 days, it could be a few days, it could be any number of those different types of things. And so this is something that it's an ongoing challenge. This is, every time we're going to iterate and improve upon this. One of the iterations I saw that came out recently, I would say earlier this year, was we started anytime an exception is thrown by any of the instances, it's logged. And then we start collating all that information. We start looking for new exceptions. So if a new exception is discovered, then we start surfacing that information because there's always going to be exceptions, and that's an unfortunate truth. But some exceptions are known and some exceptions are brand new, maybe because of a new feature. So we want to surface that information whenever possible. And this isn't going to prevent every single bug from being released out there. This is the high severity defect escape rate. And what this does is what we're doing is we're tracking anytime a Sev 0 or Sev 1, meaning a show-stopping bug, was discovered. And we have the and-on cord. We do a retrospective. It's blameless retro to make sure that this was the reason. This is how we're going to fix the problem, make sure it doesn't happen again. And we want to make sure that that is very, very low. But it's at the same time, it's not an impossible thing to happen. So that can still happen even with all the guardrails that we have in place, even though we have a ton of automated tests, even though we use, trunk-based development and feature toggles, those issues can still get out there. That's an unfortunate truth, but that's just kind of how software works. Now, we're not going to treat every issue the same with this because there's some issues that are like, oh, you misspelled this word. yeah, that's an annoyance. It kind of makes you look bad, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas I can't deploy or something like that. Now, the other big challenge that you're going to run into is that feature flags, it requires the expand and contract pattern. This is a very disciplined approach to adding code, meaning that you're going to have to expand your code base to add the feature toggles and make sure that everything is going to work and run the appropriate tests. And you have to do it for both the positive case as well as the negative case, meaning when it's turned on as well as when it's turned off. So you're going to have to add that. And then at some point in the future, you're going to have to contract your code base. You're going to have to remove the negative use case when it's turned off, as well as all the appropriate tests for that. And that does require a bit of discipline. And so you almost need a forcing function that forces you to have to do that. Now, for us, oftentimes we remove the feature toggles before they're released to our self-hosted customers. So that's a nice forcing function for us, but that's not always the use case. And so what this ends up looking like is that there's always going to be this kind of this overhead that occurs. And so you're going to have to make these decisions yourself as to when it's appropriate to use these feature flags or feature toggles. Because there's always going to be the clear cut, for the example, the brand new user interface or platform hub. Absolutely, 100% we're going to have it behind a feature toggle. Those are very easy to say yes to. But at the same time, you're also going to have to worry about what about the overhead on top of that? Are we going to have to do things like, reduce the code and have to go back through and clean everything up? And is it worth the overhead? Is this worth all of the time and everything along those lines? And so those are discussions that you'll have to have internally, because there's always going to be the clear cut yes and the clear cut no, but there's always going to be that messy middle in between on something like that. So key takeaways from this session. Canary deployments, they are fantastic at de-risking deployment failures, but they're not fantastic at de-risking new features and functionality. So again, what I mean by a deployment failure is, can I deploy the thing? Will it run? And if it doesn't run, okay, that's, I want to make sure I resolve that. But it's not going to be good for de-risking a new feature like a brand new user interface or a brand new feature like Platform Hub. The safest deployment strategy that you can have is when you separate deploying new code from releasing new functionality. And this is because the number one reason for all show-stopping bugs is going to be when you add new features to your code base. Treat your deployment pipeline like it's an assembly line. Always keep moving forward and use trunk-based development because you're going to make small incremental changes on something like that. But again, provide the psychological safety to allow anyone to stop that assembly line if you need to. Don't treat it like they did something wrong or anything like that. Treat it like this is a good problem to have and we need to resolve this. And truth be told, when it comes to rollbacks, feature toggles, they provide the best rollback strategy. Because with Canary deployments, you're de-risking a deployment failure. And if a deployment failure starts happening, well, you don't proceed. You go back to you don't even let people get onto the new version or anything along those lines. But when it comes to new features and functionality, feature toggles are the best because it allows you to turn off a particular feature. And one of the big challenges we always see with rollbacks is when you roll something back, every change goes back. That means bug fixes, security patches, everything like that. But again, with feature toggles, you can be very targeted in whether or not you want to turn on a feature or turn off a feature. So it's of all of the options that you have available, it's far and away the best. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have more questions or if they come up, please feel free to reach out to me, as well as please feel free to grab the white paper. I have the QR code for both up there. Thank you very much.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Bob. We had a couple of just comments that came in. First, we had Tony mention your achieving continuous delivery with TPF. This is obviously a white paper you had written. You can find this up on our publications site. Can you tell folks a little bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the things that I talked about today, which was trunk-based development, trunk-based development, progressive rollouts such as canary-styled rollouts, as well as feature toggles. Everything I pretty much talked about today, it's the white paper to kind of really hammer home why it is the best solution when it comes to continuous delivery.
Fantastic. And as Joanna points out, you'll find additional white papers at /publications. Steve also made the comment here that it's great to see this being used at scale in the real world. This is such a thoughtful approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, it solved a very interesting problem for us. So we're really happy that it's out there and we show that it can work.
Fantastic. And so you can either scan the QR code if you're so inclined, or you can visit /publications if you're wanting to find out more. Don't forget to connect with Bob. You can see all the socials there. You can also connect to him through the QR code. Any final words before we move on to our next presentation there, Bob?
No, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. All right,
Yep.
We'll let you go. Awesome stuff. So there you have it, folks. Got some great stuff from Bob there, which is awesome to see. Let's go ahead and invite Costas to join the stage now. I'll just bring up the schedule here. So we've got Costas next, talking about scaling Argo CD for the enterprise. So this is going to be for obviously folks who are dealing with Argo CD. And if you're looking to obviously do installations against that, you can certainly set that up. And I'm just working with Costas right now to get him added to the stream. So this is me tap dancing with Costas. So just talking to Costas on the side note here. So I only see settings, leave, and share screen at the bottom. Yes, you should be able. Let me see if I can invite him explicitly. Let's see here. See if I can invite him. All right. The power of technology. All right, let's go ahead and move to backstage. Apologies for that, Costas. That was my fault. Sorry about that. This newfangled technology, I apologize. Costas, sorry. I was trying to figure out how to promote you from the green room. I apologize.
That's fine.
All right, I'll let you get started. Here are your slides. Oh, let me remove mine and add your slides. And everyone give a big, warm virtual welcome to Costas.
Hello. So this will be a technical presentation about Argo CD. And we're going to focus specifically on how to adopt Argo CD in an enterprise. So think many clusters, many applications, big teams. It's not just your typical home lab. So my name is Kostis. I'm working at Octopus Deploy as a developer advocate. Previously, I was working at Codefresh, and you might have seen my articles on the Codefresh blog. I'm actually a member of the Argo team, focusing on Argo CD and Argo rollouts, and I'm the co-author of the first ever GitHub certification that is available today at learning.octopus.com. So these are some of the topics that we will cover, and some of them maybe you have seen before, but some of them are brand new. Finalizers is my favorite one. I think that finalizers is a great topic, and there isn't enough content out there. So if you ever wondered what finalizers do in Argo CD and how to use them, stay until the end. So hopefully everybody will find something for themselves. So just to cover the basics and make sure that everybody's on the same page, let's cover the most popular Argo CD question ever. How do you install Argo CD? Okay. So if you're familiar with how Argo CD gets installed, essentially you have two choices. You can install Argo CD on each cluster. That's the setup on the right. Or you can have an Argo CD instance that is installed centrally, and then it's controlling other clusters. And I want to be super clear, this is an Argo CD instance controlling other Kubernetes clusters, not controlling other Argo CD instances. So this is a very popular question, and we have to cover this today because so many people are asking about this, especially when they start with Argo CD. And the answer is it depends. So we're not going to cover this today. We will need maybe 6 hours, but there is an article that we wrote. It's available on the Codefresh blog. You can see the QR code there, and it explains all the advantages and disadvantages for each way. And maybe you need to understand, what is best for your own company. Maybe in some company you need to do one, another company the other. So this is the answer to the question. Go and read it. But since you are here with me, I can also make a suggestion. I suggest you start with a centralized mode. So you install Argo CD on a central cluster. Here it's the admin cluster. And then you control other clusters. And this is my suggestion because there are several features of Argo CD, mainly application sets, that assume you have this centralized setup. So do this if you have, let's say, a small number of clusters. And you can see I'm showing here the typical trilogy of QA, staging, and production. That being said, maybe you are working a financial company or a company that has strict requirements and you need to follow some legislations. And maybe you have this requirement where production must be always different than non-production stuff. So in this case, and in this case only, you can modify the infrastructure and have 2 central Argo CD instances, one for handling all production clusters and one that is handling everything that is non-production. But that's it. Don't add 3 central instances or 4 instances for tooling and stuff like this. You will make your life more difficult. So now that I covered the most popular Argo CD question ever, let's start with a presentation of how you adopt Argo CD in the enterprise. And the first thing I'm going to talk about, essentially the points are according to the order I see them in companies, is to avoid dynamic applications. And by this, I mean that several companies do the mistake of adopting Argo CD, and instead of reevaluating their infrastructure or rethinking how the infrastructure works, they just take Argo CD and just put it in the existing stuff they already have without any extra thought. And this is almost always a mistake. So usually companies have some kind of a database or internal system or another application that is handling all the configuration of the applications. And then they think that Argo CD is just another standard application that because it has an API, you can call the API and do stuff. So they attach Argo CD to their existing infrastructure by simply taking the configuration from the internal system and then passing it to Argo CD. And if you are familiar with the GitOps principles, you should instantly understand that this is a mistake because nothing is saved anywhere. If you're not familiar with the GitOps principles, I'm not going to talk them about today. Go to opengitops.dev and look at them. We have so many presentations about the GitOps principles. You're falling into this trap if you're doing any of these. So here, this company has a custom CLI. This is my app CLI that you run it. It connects to this magic database, and then it takes all the information it needs and it passes it to Argo CD by using the Argo CD CLI. Or you can use some fancy templating or bash scripts or whatever. Here in this example, I'm using subst and a template, and then you pass this to kubectl apply. So these are not saved anywhere. You just created an application that is not saved anywhere in Git. So if this Argo CD instance goes down, you lost everything. You didn't lose like the application itself, but you lost the configuration of the application. And this is exactly what GitOps says that you shouldn't do. GitOps says that everything should be stored in Git, not only the applications themselves, but also the configuration. So if you work in a company and this is the official way to create Argo CD applications, you are doing it wrong. What you should do instead is to follow the GitOps principles. So Argo CD works with Git. So take your existing configuration from the system that you already have. It doesn't really matter which system is that and if it's internal or not. Use any custom CLI that you already have, but the end result should be committed in Git. So take the configuration, put it in Git, and then Argo CD takes over without any idea on how these files landed in Git. But the way of interaction with Argo CD should be Git, and we'll also see why this is important. If you see the arrow between Git and the Argo CD cluster, it's bi-directional, and we are going to talk about this. So this is how you adopt Argo CD. Save everything in Git, which is a good practice anyway. I mean, you shouldn't wait for Argo CD to understand this. So this covers the initial deployment of applications. Okay, that's great. But then how do you update applications? Again, I see some companies that make the first part correct, but miss completely the second part. So they deploy the application correctly, but then they use custom scripts or custom tools or Terraform or other kubectl commands, and they update the applications. Here I have 2 examples. Usually these commands are in a CI system like Jenkins or Circle CI or TeamCity. And again, this is wrong. This change is not saved anywhere. Like you do an upgrade with kubectl, and this change is not in Git anymore. If the Argo CD instance goes down, you lose this information because it wasn't stored anywhere. So keep in mind that you need to work with GitOps both for the initial installation of Argo CD, but also for the continuous upgrade of all the applications. And this brings me to the next point of essentially how you need to rethink the whole process. So before Argo CD, you have usually what is shown on the top here. You have a CI pipeline, let's say with Jenkins, and it's end-to-end. It starts from source code. It compiles the source code, it creates the image, maybe it's running unit tests, integration tests, it pushes the container image, and then almost always there is a custom step inside the CI system that is calling kubectl or a custom script, and then it changes the cluster. This step needs to go away because it does direct changes to the cluster that are not saved anywhere at all. You cannot audit these changes. You don't know when they happened. And if, as I said, the Argo CD instance, if your cluster goes down, you lose everything. So once you adopt Argo CD, you need to go on the setup on the bottom. The first part of the CI process stays exactly the same. Okay, your CI system still compiles code, runs integration tests, unit tests, security scans, but it stops when the container image is pushed. And then it's your responsibility, either with the CI system or a different system, or even with Octopus, to commit the manifests to Git, to update the images in Git, so that Argo CD can take over and can pull the changes from Git. So as far as Argo CD is concerned, it only looks at Git and makes changes to the cluster according to Git. There isn't any custom script that is making direct changes to the cluster. So yes, you can keep your CI process, but only one part of it, okay? Not the whole thing. Okay, so now you know how you install Argo CD, you know how to use Argo CD, how do you organize the Git repos that I'm talking about? This is also another big subject, and we could talk 5 hours about this. But I'm just going to cover here the basics. First of all, you need to split your Git repositories. The number one best practice for Argo CD is that you should keep your source code in one Git repo. This is what developers work on. This is what they continue to do their pull requests. But then you have a separate Git repo for all the Kubernetes manifests. This is the absolute minimum because each system has its own life cycle and its own needs. For very big installations, and we are going to see some examples, maybe you need to even further split the Kubernetes manifests between the manifests that are for the applications themselves. So deployments, ingress controllers, service and stuff like this, and then a separate Git repo for Argo CD manifests. So the applications and the application sets, depending on the size of your company. But the end result is that every Git repository should have like a different life cycle. So usually source code is changing all the time, like developers commit features and they want to send them to production very fast. Your customized and Helm files, they do not change that often, at least the basic changes. Maybe you change them every day or every hour, or then there is a new image. And your application sets should never change. Like you create them once and then that's it. So it doesn't really make sense to use the same Git repo to store things that have different life cycles. Use different Git repositories. Now, the next question is how many Git repositories you have. And here there is also a very big discussion. You will find lots of information on the internet. I'm going to give you here my personal opinion, which is create a Git repository per team, or maybe per department, depending on the size of the company. This will also help developers, and we will see the interaction with developers later, that they want to check out something that is only related to them. They don't want to see the whole thing because maybe it's confusing or maybe they don't care about anything else. So create a Git repository per team, and also the infra team or DevOps team or whatever you call them, the operator team, they are a team on their own. So there is a Git repository that has applications like Core DNS, Nginx, Set Manager, like not the things that developers develop. So this is my recommendation, and this will help you avoid lots of bottlenecks that come if you try to use a single repository. Because this is what I see all the time. Companies adopt Argo CD, and for some reason, maybe because it's the path of least resistance, they have a single mono repo for everything because it makes things easy for operators, maybe not for developers. And this, if you're in a big company, will become the bottleneck. At some point in time, you will have issues either with Argo CD syncing or with Argo CD pulling changes from the Git repo. It will be a big problem. I'm not going to cover all the possible solutions there. There are a lot. There is a dedicated page that I have linked here for Argo CD that has a lot of points on how you can fine-tune this setup. A lot of people are missing the manifest generate path annotation, which instructs Argo CD to only look at the specific paths that the application depends on. My point from this slide is that if you want to do a monorepo, yes, it's possible, but do some research, understand what is going on, understand all the capabilities that Argo CD offers for this, because if you don't, you will have a bottleneck. And usually it's at this point when people come to us and say our big Argo CD installation is not working, and we ask them, are you using a monorepo? And they say yes, and we know what we will do. Okay, so now we talked about the Git repos. What do you actually put into these Git repos? And I will cover both Helm and Customize because I love both, but Helm is more popular. So let's start with this. I see a lot of companies that either try to learn Helm and Argo CD at the same time, or even worse, they think they know about Helm, but in reality they don't. And they try to solve the Helm problems with Argo CD, or they try to replicate Helm functionality with Argo CD. So if you're using Helm, I expect from you to know how Helm works on its own. Okay, this is super important. How Helm works on its own before Argo CD gets into the picture. So Helm on its own supports Helm hierarchies. You can create a tree of Helm values, and these values can be ordered. The order is important, and the last one wins. Like if you have the same setting in all these three files, the one that is defined in the specific prod cluster YAML will take effect over everything that is above it. And if you use the Helm CLI, and notice I'm talking about the standard Helm CLI, okay? We're not talking about Argo CD just yet. You can put many values in the command line, and again, the last one wins. This is standard Helm functionality that you should know, okay? Because I see a lot of people who try to replicate this setup. So once you know how Helm works, go ahead and create all your Helm values for all your environments in a self-contained way, okay? Argo CD is not here just yet. There is nothing specific to Argo CD in these folders and in these directories. It is just Helm values, and they should be in the correct hierarchy where you have generic values for all environments, then maybe other values for specific regions or types of environments, and then special values for specific clusters. This should be in place before you adopt Argo CD. Once you adopt Argo CD, if you have this setup already, things are super easy and super clear. Argo CD essentially replicates what Helm already does. So here I have my Argo CD application, and you can see I have a list of value files, and Argo CD will treat them exactly the same way as standard Helm. It will process all of them, but the last one wins. So if there is a specific setting, value in specific prod cluster that has the same name with everything else, it will take effect and everything above it will be ignored. So if you adopt Argo CD and you already have your Helm value files in place, everything is super easy. If you haven't understood how Helm works, you will try to replicate with Argo CD features that already work with Helm. And then you fall into the trap that you make life difficult for everybody, especially for developers. Like if you try to put Helm stuff into Argo CD files, you have now two sources of information. There is some part of the application lives in Helm values, and some part of the application lives in Argo CD files. And especially developers will get confused right away because they will not understand how an application is deployed. They will not know where to look, and you will start a very difficult discussion with them. You will also force them to learn about Argo CD, and we will see why this is really, really bad. Ideally, if you have followed my advice and your Helm values are self-contained, developers essentially don't have to do anything with Argo CD. They can take any Helm chart plus the values and run it locally, which is the best possible scenario for developers. They don't need to install Argo CD. They don't need to know anything about Argo CD. They just run the application locally, and it's self-contained, and everything works as expected. So this is what we want to do with developers. If you want to know more about how to use Helm with Argo CD, because this is also a big topic, I have written a complete guide. You can see the blog post, and there is also a QR code, and you can see there also a starting Git repository that you can use for your own applications. I try to do this in most of my articles. There is the guide itself, and then there is also a Git repository that has a full example, so you can also try it by yourself. So this covers Helm, but I don't want to leave Customize fans sad. So let's talk about Customize as well. This is actually the one I prefer. Again, Customize is a tool that has lots of functionality on its own before you bring Argo CD into the mix. And apart from the overlays, everybody knows about Customize overlays. There are several other components and config map generators and transformers that offer lots more functionality to customize. And I find that a lot of people don't know anything about it. Like they come to us, they say we have a customized setup with Argo CD and it doesn't work. And I ask, okay, do you know anything about components? And they say, no, we don't. And this is actually my standard question. Like when somebody comes to me and says, we have the perfect setup with Customize and we are Customize experts and we know how Customize works, I ask them, do you know what is the difference between Customize, overlays, and components? And almost always people only know about overlays and they know nothing about components. Here I asked the LLM the same question, and I'm just pointing this to show you that it's not like a simple answer. You need to do some research and understand how Customize works and how to combine Customize components and Customize overlays before bringing Argo CD into the mix. This is also very easy to do let's say, self-test. If you truly understand Customize, go to the Customize documentation page and just tell me how many of the entries on the left you have actually read and understood. And a lot of people have never actually seen this list, or they have seen that just the basics, or they have read just overlays and namespace suffix, and that's it. So go and read the Customize documentation and understand all the capabilities that Customize offers, and then try to adopt Argo CD. Don't try to learn Customize and Argo CD at the same time. Same problem for Helm. Like if you try to split the information and you have some values in Customize overlays, some information in Customize overlays, and some information in Argo CD applications inside the Customize property, you will confuse developers. They will not know how an application is running. They will take the overlay and they will see that something is missing, and they will start asking questions. And you will say to them, oh, you also need to learn about how Argo CD and how Argo CD injects customized information into Argo CD applications. Don't do that. You make life for developers super difficult. If you want to know how to use Customize with Argo CD, there is an article. Of course, here is a link and the QR code. And like the previous one, there is a special, an associated Git repository that has a real example that you can use as a starting point for your own applications. So if you're using Helm, there is an example. If you're using Customize, there is an example. Everybody should be super happy. Now, we talked a lot about developers and when you make their life difficult, so I want to have a separate section for them. One thing I didn't mention in my introduction is that I was a developer before becoming a developer advocate. So I know the pain of developers when they try to work in a company and the system is working against them, or it is making things difficult for them. So don't force developers to use Argo CD. So here I'm showing you the brain of a developer. This is the brain scan of a developer. I'm showing you what they have in their mind. And the bigger the box, the more important this thing is for developers. So as you can see, the bigger box is programming. This is the knowledge they need to write their favorite programming language, and they keep up with the new features of the programming language and how they use it. Then there is a smaller box, which is domain knowledge. So if they're working for a finance company, they need to know some financial stuff. If they're working for a medical company, they need to know some medical terms. It depends on the company they work for, and it's also a big box, like it's important on how they write code. Then Kubernetes is just a technical detail. It is just a deployment target, and they are not really interested about this. Before Kubernetes, it was VM. Maybe they also deploy stuff with functions or on-prem or whatever. Helm and Customize is an even smaller box. It's part of Kubernetes, so they don't really care about Helm and Customize. Maybe they will try to learn it if they need. And then Argo CD is this small box on the corner. So developers don't want to learn anything about Argo CD. Maybe Argo CD is interesting for you and important for you because, of course, it creates deployment process. But as far as developers are concerned, they don't care about Argo CD. And I have this in a separate slide on its own. Developers do not care about Argo CD manifest. They don't want to learn Argo CD. They're not interested in Argo CD. They don't care about how Argo CD works and how it injects customized information or Helm information manifest. This is not for them. So don't ask them to become Argo CD experts. If you look at the typical day of a developer or the typical session of a developer, and this is true, for any developers, most of their time is spent on their workstation creating a feature. Like they code, Yes, today they will use an LLM to create code. That's not really important, but they will create the feature locally on their workstation. And then at some point they will say, okay, I feel confident, and they will start testing it still locally. And when they are truly confident that something is ready, then they will push the code to a Git repo, and your deployment system will take over. So Argo CD or Octopus or something else. So this is the point that developers expect to interact with Argo CD if it is needed. Like when they need to commit and push something, they expect Argo CD to deploy the application to QA, and if things go well, take it to the next level. You can see that they do not expect to work with Argo CD locally. This is not something that they want. They need to spend 60% of the time in their workstation with just their favorite programming language in their IDE. And at some point at the end, maybe at the end of the day, when they push to a production, then they expect Argo CD to take over. And this is their time to interact with Argo CD. So if you force them to use Argo CD for local development, you make their life miserable. They don't want to learn Argo CD, they don't care about Argo CD, and they will not like to install Argo CD just for testing things locally. It's not something that they would like to do. And you can see if you are falling into this trap if a developer asks you, how do I run this application? And your first answer is, oh, you need to install Argo CD on your workstation, okay? If you do this, developers will get mad. They will not care about the rest of the answer. Because you have followed all the anti-patterns I explained before, like if you have some information in Argo CD manifest and not only Helm charts or customized overlays, developers need to work with Argo CD, and this is something that they hate. So if you find yourself that you have somewhere a wiki page where you explain to developers how they need to install Argo CD locally, you are doing it wrong. As we said before, if developers want to test something locally, they should be able to get only the Helm chart or only the customized overlays and components, run them locally without any knowledge of Argo CD. This is the ideal scenario, and this is how you can keep your developers happy. I'm also going to talk about the developer experience in general. Yes, you should also make a choice on how you approach developers, like as a whole strategy. So here you can see it's a spectrum. You can go one way or the other. So all the way to the right, you give them full access to Argo CD. They can do whatever they want. They can sync applications, delete applications. Then maybe in the middle, Argo CD is only available for debugging, or maybe it's read-only. And then on the left, Argo CD is not available at all. Maybe you have a developer platform in front, like Backstage or Port, and they interact with that instead of Argo CD. Now, there isn't a correct or wrong answer here, but you need to decide what you want for developers and enforce it, okay? You need to make an informed decision, talk with the developers, of course, talk with your team leads, talk with everybody else. And if you insist and if you want, to give access to developers to Argo CD, you can do it. And here I'm saying that Argo CD already has the capability to be used with multi-user and multi-tenant scenarios. So there is a way where you can pull your users from SSO, you can define teams and then define specific applications and say this team of developers can access only these applications and they cannot access those applications. You can do it. I'm not going to explain today how you can do it, but know that this capability exists and it's very flexible. So here I have an example where I allow a developer to look at some Argo CD applications, but they are not allowed to do anything, not even sync, which is, let's say, a safe operation. So here a developer tried to sync an application that doesn't belong to their team, and they get an error message because I have not allowed this action for them. So you can do this. If you want to know how to enforce this, like the technical details, again, we have a guide. This is how to secure Argo CD with application projects and how RBAC works. This is the QR code and the URL. And again, there is a GitHub repo that you can use as a starting point. The last point regarding developers is grouping applications. So this is a big question that existed even before Kubernetes and even before Argo CD, especially if you're using microservices, how you group applications. So with Argo CD, you get so many more options. Maybe you had Helm umbrella charts already, but now you have Argo CD applications and application sets. Again, I cannot tell you this is the perfect thing for your company, but you need to sit down and talk with everybody and understand what are the possible choices and why. Because I see so many people that they come to us, they say they have an issue and they say, for example, they are using Helm umbrella charts. And I ask them, why did you use Helm umbrella charts and not application sets? And they just look at me like they said, we never understood that this was a real question. So here are some starting questions that you need to do with your team. And even though I'm spending 3 minutes on this topic in my presentation, maybe in your company, this topic is 2 hours or 2 days, depending on the size of your company. So bring all teams together, understand where are the applications deployed, how they are deployed, which applications are always deployed together, which applications are always upgraded together, which teams are controlling applications, and then make an informed decision on how you group those applications. Auto-sync and self-heal, it's a very important feature of Argo CD. For me, it's probably the main point why you're using Argo CD in the first place. So remember this picture I showed before where it's the before and after, like before you adopt Argo CD and after Argo CD. And some people might see the picture at the bottom and say, oh, this looks more complex. Like, why should I use Argo CD now with this more complex setup? And it's true that it's more complex because you get Argo CD in the mix, but you also have a unique advantage. With Argo CD, you avoid configuration drift completely. So configuration drift is an existing problem. It was true forever, even before Kubernetes, where you think you have some kind of configuration or values in a specific server, and in reality, you don't. So here I have a very simple example where you have 3 servers in the beginning. They are all the same, but then a cowboy developer does a, let's say, temporary change in the second server, and then once you deploy, your deployment fails, and you start to wonder why has deployment failed, and then after a discussion and evaluation, you see that this server is different than the rest. So this is why your deployment failed. So this was true even before Kubernetes, and it's true today with Kubernetes. And today, cowboy developers or cowboy operators use kubectl. You can use kubectl and do manual changes to a cluster that are not saved anywhere at all. So maybe you have a developer that does a temporary change in QA, or even worse, a temporary change in production, and this is not saved anywhere. And especially if you're working with a company that has, strict legislations, this is a big problem. So that's the problem. And once you adopt Argo CD, you completely eliminate this problem. So remember I talked about before that the arrow between Argo CD and Git has 2 arrows, like it is pointing both ways. It is bi-directional. So Argo CD not only monitors Git repos and applies changes to the cluster, but it also does the opposite. It monitors the cluster and notifies you when something has changed. So here a cowboy developer did a manual change in the cluster, and Argo CD understood this, and it said to me, look, your application is healthy, but it's out of sync. Like, things are okay now, but what you have in Git is not the same that you have in the cluster. So I can click on my application and right away in 3 seconds understand what is different. So here the developer added this, and now that I know this information, I can go and talk to the developer and ask them, hey, why do you need this? Should we commit it? Should we not commit it? But it's also easy to discard it completely. Like, I can set up Argo CD to discard any manual changes. So this is what you get compared to traditional pipelines. Like, a Jenkins pipeline only knows what is happening while the pipeline is running. It doesn't know anything after 5 minutes that the pipeline has finished. So if you adopt Argo CD, make sure to enable always auto-sync and self-heal. Auto-sync means one direction of the arrow. Self-heal means the other direction of the arrow. It will monitor the cluster, and also it will discard any changes that are found in the cluster. And please enable this in production. Production is exactly the place where you want to avoid configuration drift and don't have any issues. Sync phases and sync waves is another popular subject that I'm going to cover a bit here. It's how you order your resources once you deploy them. So if you don't define any waves or phases, Argo CD will just do the default, and the default is the same as the Helm default ordering. It will follow a predefined order, but maybe in your application, you need to select a different order of resources, and you can do this with Cook and sync waves. And my point here is go and read the Argo CD documentation. I know it sounds basic, but lots of people did not do this. This is actually a diagram we added recently in the official Argo CD documentation, which is groundbreaking for several people, that explains what you get out of the box with Argo CD. So you can see here you have the main sync process, you have things before the sync process, after the sync process, and also if things fail, you can do some cleanups. So notice the phases, notice also the arrows. So you can call a cleanup job in sync fail if something failed in the sync phase. But if, let's say, something fails in post-sync, you can see there is no arrow that connects post-sync to fail. You cannot run a cleanup job if post-sync fails. So understand this, and if you try to use waves, which is a way of numbering your resources according to the order that you want, understand that waves are scoped. This is an important point that a lot of people are missing or are getting confused. Waves are scoped per phase. So this -2 in the first phase is completely different than this -2 in the second phase, which is completely different than this -20 in the last phase. Understand how you can use them together. This is also my suggestion, to use only sync waves. If you don't want to have a problem with scopes, just have a flat list of sync waves and order your resources as you want. This is my suggestion. If you want to do more advanced stuff, like if you want before a deployment to notify Grafana, send a message to Slack, have an if statement that if something fails, do something else. And then after that deployment, run some smoke tests, and if they fail, do something. Then you don't need to abuse Argo CD. There is another project called Argo Workflows, which is also from the Argo family, and it's created for exactly this kind of scenario. So go and understand what Argo Workflows offers in addition to Argo CD, and understand how you can use those two projects together. If you try to model complex workflows with Argo CD sync phases, you will fail, and usually this is when you come to us. Here are some example questions I see people are asking, where I understand that essentially either they have not used workflows, or they are trying to abuse sync waves for things that were never meant to. Okay, so don't fall into these traps. Into this trap, if you find you're asking these questions, please check Argo Workflows. And last but not least, finalizers, one of my favorite topics. Okay, this is the final point. If you are working with Argo CD, you should know that essentially at any point in time, you have 4 points of resources or information. So first of all, you have your Helm or customized files in Git that define your application. This is shown at the bottom right. Then you have your Argo CD manifests in Git. These are your application sets and applications, and they are shown on the bottom left. So this is what exists in Git. And once you deploy to Argo CD applications are becoming resources on the cluster. This is what is shown on the top left. And then these reference specific resources that are deployed, which is what you care about on the top right. So these are the 4 sources of information. And if you remember the discussion about configuration drift, Argo CD guarantees that always what you have in the bottom is the same thing that you have in the top, and vice versa. This is just the standard Argo CD installation. What most people don't know is that you can play with finalizers and have orphan resources, like have Kubernetes resources that are no longer controlled by Argo CD. This is possible, and it's sometimes, and we will see some examples, it's also desirable. So you can have only the right part of this picture. Or you can have this. You can have Argo CD resources that are not controlling any Kubernetes applications, and sometimes this is also desirable. So understand that this, happy path scenario sometimes exists only at 50% of capacity. So you control this right and left part of the diagram with finalizers. Argo CD finalizers are an implementation of Kubernetes finalizers specifically for Argo CD, where you can instruct Argo CD to not delete Kubernetes resources when an Argo CD application is deployed. So I'm going to talk about 2 specific use cases. One is when you want to migrate applications from one Argo CD instance to the next, or once you have a single Argo CD instance and you want to upgrade it in place without any downtime. So this is my starting point. I have an Argo CD instance. It's controlling my Kubernetes applications. They are referencing Helm and customized files. Everything works great. The application is up. The application is healthy. Customers are happy. So I launched a second Argo CD instance. And for a brief, let's say, period of time, I also pointed to the exact same Kubernetes manifest. This is possible. This is not something that you should do, all the time, but you can do it as a temporary measure. So for a brief moment in time, I have 2 Argo CD instances controlling the same applications. And why do I want to do this? Because this is my time where I check Argo CD. I see that everything is fine, it's healthy, it's controlling the same applications, everything is great. Then I remove the finalizers from the first instance, and I remove the first Argo CD instance completely. And because I removed the finalizers, the applications remained unaffected. So I migrate my applications from Argo CD instance A to Argo CD instance B without any downtime. My applications are still up users were not affected at all. A similar scenario is upgrading Argo CD in place. So here I have Argo CD version 2.4 and I want to go to the brand new version and everything works great. I am going to remove my finalizer, remove that version, and for a brief point in time, these resources are orphan, like they are not controlled by anybody. They will just keep working just fine. If a node is removed, Kubernetes will relaunch the pods in a different node. Everything is fine, but there is simply no Argo CD instance controlling them anymore. Then I will create my new Argo CD cluster, my version 3. So I updated my Argo CD instance, and then I point this Argo CD instance to the exact same manifest. So now Argo CD is adopting my applications without any downtime. And again, users were not affected at all. And I did all this because I played with the finalizers. So if you want to do advanced scenarios, understand how finalizers work. And if you want to know more, guess what? There is an article about finalizers that you can find here with a QR code where you can read about this use case and other use cases about finalizers. And last but not least, if you don't have time to read articles and guides, or you want to speak with a human, or you want to get help, Octopus right now has professional support for enterprise setups of Argo CD. And I want to make it clear that this is a standalone offering. You don't need to use Octopus or any of the Codefresh products to get this. You can come to us and ask us about your Argo CD setup. It is not just me. There is a whole team behind me. And actually, all the members of my team are Argo members as well. They are the people that contribute to Argo daily. If, for example, you want to upgrade your Argo CD instance from version 2 to version 3, you can come to us and get help from Reggie, who is the person who actually released Argo CD version 3. Okay, ask the person that released Argo CD version 3 about your Argo CD instance. Another thing that you should do is join the CNCF Slack. There are channels for all the Argo projects, including Argo CD. This is where all the developers hang out, and this is where you can also ask questions, see how things are happening with Argo CD, see the new features, also answer questions if you want, and you will also find me there, but I'm including my email here as well. And that's it.
Awesome stuff, Kostas. Thank you very much. You know, Kostas, you talk just as proficiently as you write. So to give folks an example, you know, this is one of many of Kostas's articles that he's written. This is a 40-minute read, just a light read, you know. And if you notice the size of the scroll bar, how small it is, and you just keep page down, page down, page down, like, you know, if you're looking for someone who really knows their stuff around Argo CD, maybe Kostas is someone worth calling. Anyways, there you go.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, great stuff. So yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to Kostas. Thank you very much, Kostas. That was awesome.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll let you go. All right, there you go, folks. That was Kostas on everything you could possibly ever want to know about deploying to Argo CD in a enterprise fashion. All right, getting back to our schedule here. You can see now we've got, coming up next, we got Jim talking about from zero to continuous assurance, how Octopus Deploy automates trust and compliance at scale. Jim and I go way back. I've known Jim. I call him the Lieutenant Commander Worf, the security guy of Octopus Deploy. And so really great to see a session from him. So let's go ahead and turn the stage over to Jim.
Welcome, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm Jim. I'm the Director of Information GRC at Octopus, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how we at Octopus Deploy over the years have come to see the security, trust, and compliance issues that we all face in a way that elevates it from box-ticking exercises to becoming a real market differentiator. And that's because we treat our approach to compliance as a product feature, and we design it to both guide and support members of our organization so that our customers can benefit from high quality software and operations that the right standards can bring to any organization. So a little bit about me. I began my IT career back in the late 90s. And my first engineering tasks were to build a search engine for WordPerfect documents. I was recruited to fix hundreds of Y2K bugs at some local government place. And, you know, after having some of the development and leadership gigs over the years in finance and medical technology companies as well, I've sort of gained a healthy sense of paranoia about security, and I still have some PTSD from building PCI compliant systems for a level 2 merchant as well. So I started at Octopus in 2018 as a senior engineer, and since then I've been heavily involved in bootstrapping and later leading our ISO 27001 and SOC 2 efforts. So having previously worked in medical tech and finance before, I feel that my exposure to leading these compliance software engineering efforts has sort of helped me out along the way. So I want to share some of the stuff that I've learned and how we're applying it here at Octopus. So before we dive in, I'll just set the scene for this journey that I'm going to take you on. To clarify, by the way, whenever you see the term compliance or security compliance, I'm sort of using those terms interchangeably, but just be aware that my team here also handles some of the regulatory compliance side of things as well. So with that all said, I'll take our initial challenges and why compliance is a must-have for any organization who manages risks from data privacy all the way through to payment processing concerns. I'll then give you some insight into what compliance as code and continuous compliance looks like in a practical setting, and reveal some of the ways that we automate evidence collection here so that you might be able to do it as well. Look at some of the quality control gates that exist that we can leverage and how they're important to speeding up your audits, and then we'll have a look at some of the integrated monitoring solutions that we use here at Octopus as well. Let's get into it. So now, having spoken to some of our customers directly over the years, I've come to realize that it's a bit of a mistake for a vendor to assume the threat model of our customers. And while you've all got some similar core security requirements when it comes to policy-based issues, they can actually differ quite a bit. For this reason, I want to spend a little bit more time commiserating with some of you and explaining to others why this is such an important challenge, why I'm even here talking about how Octopus Deploy does security compliance at all. In a nutshell, it's hard, and proving it is even harder. So first, let's look at the vast majority of businesses' experience of trust, compliance, and security out there at the moment. So a lot of you will probably resonate with the things on this slide. There's costs associated with time and friction. Things slow down. So things like innovation, every manual compliance step creates a bottleneck, and it prevents new features from reaching the market quickly. And so you have these opportunity costs. You've got disconnected processes. Policies live in a document while the actual process lives in code, and the two don't always line up. Sometimes it's either redundant or it's friction, or sometimes there's no automation for the steps, and so they're ungainly. We have costs of audit scrambles as well. So we see a lot of wasted resources where, because audits basically suck, everyone avoids them, and we throw very limited people power at them. And the reality is that, manual compliance doesn't really scale very well, and small compliance teams can often become the biggest bottleneck for a growing organization. And the last thing you really want to do is pull off your valuable engineers off of really important work to chase down evidence and things like that. So that leads to a custom complexity as well, in that we have so many standards, and that list is growing year by year. It's really hard to take a stock take of all the different standards we have to comply with, to be honest. But when you do, you start to see an exponential growth of security controls. And the more that you have, the more people think that it's box ticking. And that's the last thing you want people to feel like, is that they're just simply going through the motions and appeasing auditors rather than addressing real things. And so if you're in that state, you end up with this kind of quality degradation where the evidence that you collected in the first year kind of gets copied and pasted into the next year, and it degrades over time. And if you don't have the right guardrails in place, then all you're really doing is taking your poor practices and repeating them and potentially accelerating them. So I think most of us here are technically sharp people, but as a species, I think we're notoriously bad at collecting. We're notoriously bad at collectively assessing low probability and high impact risks. And we know that we shouldn't ignore compliance, but we miscalculate or outright ignore the true cost of getting it wrong. So I want to give you a little story I saw on Reddit the other day. So this is a bit of a cautionary tale. This was posted about 3 months ago. So this poor sysadmin, who shall remain nameless, just found out that they had over 200 shadow IPs, 200 shadow APIs exposed on their production web after getting hacked. They only really realized this once the forensic exercise was done. So I can really empathize with the sysadmin on this point. I can totally see how this can happen. They go on to state that the primary attack vector was a random endpoint designed to scrape customer data. And honestly, this is every business's worst nightmare, to have customer or employee data walk out the door. And this is despite having a SIEM, and they have API scanning in place. And it's only as good as the information that they give it. You know, they say, now compliance is breathing down my neck, because they want an inventory, and the sysadmin is left holding the ball. The single person is now expected to come up with all the answers. And obviously, this is a real problem, and they want to know, is anyone else dealing with this kind of nightmare? And of course we are. We all are. How do you track new infrastructure that can get created and set up in production in an instant? And, you know, they go on to say that they really wish they had real-time monitoring. And what stands out to me is that many sysadmins in this position right now would scream to lock everything down, kick everyone out. And that's a valid approach. But our sysadmin here is thinking about ways they could solve this without blocking developers. And I think that's admirable. And in the same breath, though, he's identifying that if you simply trust people to document their work, it's not going to happen. At least it's not going to happen fast enough. And I think that's because the perceived cost of manual compliance today always feels higher than the uncertain cost of risk tomorrow. That is the fine or the data breach. And we immediately choose pain avoidance over long-term risk reduction. You know, we can see that a $50,000 consultant quote for a new policy, and we can say no to that, but we see the 3 weeks of manual work for an audit, and we prioritize the next product feature instead. So there's this kind of there's this missed opportunity here to recognize where the risks actually are. So let's go through some of them. You've got direct regulatory fines and penalties. And these are the most obvious and immediate cost. You've got things like the GDPR, which can, excuse me, the GDPR can result in, fines of up to 4% of a company's annual global turnover. And the problem here is your reactive compliance exposes you to these maximum fines because you can't prove the due diligence when the auditor shows up. You've got a loss of key certifications or contracts, and these are important because customers that you're involved in or contracts that you're involved in rely on these to exist. The problem is that if you've got bureaucratic compliance, you're creating so much friction that engineers bypass the official process. You've got business disruption and remediation costs. A major security incident caused by a compliance failure can lead to expensive recovery efforts, basically. And you only really find the hole after the ship is sunk. And fixing a vulnerability late is far more expensive than it is to prevent it in the first place. And then your shareholders are getting concerned as well. So you can experience a stock plunge off the back of a compliance failure. And the market sees breaches as evidence that the company doesn't have control over their core processes. And yeah, the list goes on. So we can choose to ignore these drivers. We're inviting catastrophic failure. We're not just talking about things like reputation damage, we're talking about direct financial and operational costs that should be demanding all of our attention right now. Things like fines, loss of certifications, and even to the point where regulatory bodies will come out and mandate external monitoring, further slowing us down. So the whole "it won't happen to us" mentality is basically a statistical long shot, and it's a gamble. It shouldn't be seen as a risk strategy. Now, I'm sure you've all seen this platitude that trust is built through consistency over time, and before you groan too hard, I know it's a cliche, but I want you to consider for a moment that this statement really affects how an organization can choose to treat security and compliance. For example, when we establish consistent automated deployment pipelines or operational runbooks, what we're inherently doing is building trust into the process at the code level. And this is a key part of continuous compliance. This automation gives us the power to build trust through consistency, but it also gives us the power to accelerate poor practices at the speed of code. So it forces a choice. How will we use this power and how will we use it responsibly? So how do organizations achieve compliance? Well, what I've noticed is that every organization comes up with their own special brew of tackling these issues, but they basically choose one of three paths when it comes to audit and compliance. First up, you've got reactive compliance. Moments before the annual audit, someone runs around and collects or even creates as much evidence as possible to appease the as yet unknown auditor. Even if all of the controls are met, it's unclear if evidence exists to show it. And that's really the main issue with this model. People will complain that audit's a nightmarish whirlwind of sudden quick questions, and we panic as we realize that control number 122 hasn't been addressed at all, and so it's panic stations. But because it only happens once a year, it's okay, right? Well, it gets, there's other ways that companies can tackle this, and the other way is kind of the other extreme, which is bureaucratic compliance, where you have an army of consultants recruited to come in and build a massive disconnected information security management system which rules over the user base with an iron fist. And that will exist in a 500-page SharePoint document. Unfortunately, your real deployment processes are documented in other places like code, but they're certainly not following what's going on in the ISMS. And so in this model, people complain of spreadsheet hellfire and brimstone, 17 levels of change management, and the classic ivory tower security staff who seem to take pleasure in saying no a lot. And why is that consultant still here after 4 years anyway? The third model I see as being a lot more calm and orderly, and that is continuous compliance. Organizations that actually view security and trust as an investment in their products and services, they get compliance as a nice byproduct of that mentality. And they do this by finding things like internal champions. They might even hire people to come into the organization. But more importantly, they'll partner with experts to turn their abstract rules and into executable code that not only runs automated checks and balances, but it's also reporting back to auditors almost directly, sometimes directly. So in this model, you're not really collecting evidence later after the fact. It's getting generated with every deployment. Now, people may still complain that there's a lot of complexity to deal with, but I think in this model, they're more likely to recognize that doing this is part of doing business and it's important to our customers. So if you remember only one thing from my talk today, I want you to remember this, is that if you treat security compliance as a 3-week event, the quality of your evidence will degrade with every deployment, leading to audit risk and release delays. If you treat compliance, however, as a sustained automated product feature, you'll build continuous trust, ensure evidence integrity, and accelerate with every release. That is to say that compliance is a product feature worth investing in. So I'll take you back to this slide. I want you to know that continuous compliance is what we're aiming for at Octopus Deploy, and part of that is having an always ready to audit mentality. We try and integrate and unify evidence collection in our reporting, and we're always looking for ways to automate guardrails and checks with our own product. And we also use help of key third parties to assist us where it's not practical to build stuff ourselves. So I want to show you a little bit about how we do that. But first, some history. Like I mentioned, I started back in 2018. There was about 45 people. And yes, this is an image of all of us that fits on a single slide at that time. Back then, we took security as seriously as we do today, which is very seriously. However, the approach was also very different. To give you some context, our engineers were responsible for directly supporting customers against the features that they ship. But back then, it was via direct conversations with customers. And at that scale, engineers had to wear multiple hats, and support engineer is one of them. But similarly, our customers weren't really demanding that we have certifications, and the only formal cert that we have was the most basic of PCI self-assessments. I think it was about 20 questions at the time, and that was because we'd outsourced all of our payment processing to a third party. We also didn't have a cloud platform yet, and we had minimal regulatory pressure. So the primary one that we had to deal with was GDPR and anti-spam laws. It was just a much simpler time. But today we're almost 400 people, and we have entire departments dedicated to different areas of the business. So it could be argued that we have a lot less multiple hat wearing going on. However, everything is that much more complex. Now, you all out there need your vendors to have certifications like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. And so we got those. Governments and regulatory bodies have demands now too. Even US presidents are getting in on the act and making requirements for everyone to follow. So yeah, technology's importance to life has driven a lot of that. And so we're also seeing things like environment and social governance issues to consider. And we're more and more asked to explain how we roll in many more ways than simply security issues. So yeah, it comes with a little bit of pride that we've grown quickly, and we've been able to make these additional commitments to our customers over that time. But one of the lessons learned is that complexity really balloons with the company and customer base sizes. So keep all of that in mind when you're relaying it back to your situation. But I do want to share some strategies for minimizing the inevitable increase that one can expect. Basically, my advice for any company would be to get started early with this problem. That way you can take a crawl, walk, run approach and just slowly increment your maturity as you go. And it's important to remember that some businesses will tackle this late anyway. And if you're in that position where you've got lots of standards to build against and you're not really sure how to wrangle this complexity, then I'd recommend that you look at a singular framework first and pilot some of these strategies in against that framework and keep it small instead. So when you're crawling, you're starting simple and you focus on that single standard that makes the most sense for you. You invest a small amount of time and money in a compliance automation tool, for example. I would personally recommend something like Vanta or DRADA. Those are excellent tools, and they will take a lot of the pain out of tracking the things that you need to track. For us, when we were in this phase early on, we were looking at self-assessment questionnaires like the CAIQ from the Cloud Security Alliance. That was an excellent exercise. It was roughly 200 questions that we spent the time to pre-fill. And that meant that whenever we talked to a customer that was curious about these things, we had a very systematic way to answer those questions. But it was really just the first step. Once you've met the controls for a single standard, it's now time to reduce the waste that you've created, because no doubt several spreadsheets and ungainly bullet point summaries of procedures will have been needed to exist for you to get here. So you might even have some policies that don't even line up with reality. And these are friction points. You need to get rid of the friction points as soon as possible, because that's actually the game, is that no matter where you are on this journey, you will always be uncovering them, and you always should be trying to push them towards zero. If you manage to do that and you manage to manage your if you manage your risks systematically at the same time, then you should start to find that you've got some room to take on more difficult certifications. This is where you can start to optimize. So in our case, when we started to really run with this concept, we started to optimize things for our own desired workflows. For example, you might be able to use machine learning techniques to speed up questionnaire fill-outs. You might be able to use similar methods to assess risks of your third-party vendors. You should be able to tackle bigger certifications because you've got a stronger handle on the basic controls that all of the certifications want you to meet. However, I should state that it is a mistake to optimize too soon. If you speed up a bad process, you will just get bad outcomes faster. So in the last part of this presentation, I just wanted to take you through some of the automated ways that we are operating behind the scenes and give you a look behind the curtain, so to speak, but also how our product also is used by us to deliver it to you. So this is an example of how we do access reviews at Octopus Deploy. This is my own Slack, for instance. And we basically have a Slack bot that is integrated with our instant messaging system, and we incorporate access reviews directly into it. So whenever something changes in our IDP, myself or another admin is getting an alert to say, hey, this has changed. You should approve or reject this. And so we've done this so that we can keep track of it. And it's also timely. So we're all inside of Slack all the time, and it's our primary mode of communication. So this suits us very well. We've also tailored the reports that it generates so that we can pump them out to an auditor at any time. As I mentioned, we use Octopus Deploy to deploy Octopus Deploy. And that means whenever our auditors need to take samples of change control or access requests or access events themselves, so whenever someone's logging into our server, we're able to use this is my favorite feature of Octopus Deploy, honestly. We're able to use our audit page to show what's going on and give them a real-time view of the different types of changes. And you can drill into a variety of these events to get even more detail as needed. So I would highly recommend setting up a user role, for example, to allow a certain amount of access to your auditors if you need them to have direct access, or at least give them access to someone who does that can take screenshots like this. And we can drill into each release and leverage the traceability back to our own source control system. So you can see here it's highlighted that you can go and view the commit on GitHub, and that means that you've got a direct line from the release back to potentially the business decision that drove the need for this change. If your teams are diligent about writing good PRs, then that information will be on GitHub. You can go one step further in that from there, because most of us will also have a ticketing system behind the scenes, and that will often integrate directly with GitHub. So that's the case for us, and we can show for any given release on our website, we can show our auditors the full chain of evidence from the point in time that the developer made the first commits all the way through to the test environment and back out the door through Octopus Deploy and into your hands in production. And I must say, every single auditor that I've dealt with has absolutely loved this fact, and it's streamlined so many questions about change control for us. Now, we actually manage segregation environments through Octopus Deploy as well, and that's through the tenants feature. And this also makes it really easy to explain to an auditor just how that logical separation is achieved. And if you've got different environments set up as well, you can show them, and they can automatically see that you have segregated things in the right way. We also make extensive use of spaces to separate our own team's work so we can define what's in and out of scope for auditing, for example. And this is important because we have hard walls with spaces. And so we can say, okay, well, the content team is out of scope. The core platform is in scope. And so we can track that and limit the amount of information that auditors need to see in order to make their determination as to whether or not we're meeting their controls or not. It's also worth highlighting that things like variables are effectively immutable. So this eliminates questions like, how do you manage secrets in prod? Well, the answer's right here. You can see here that the release had this version of the variable set. So they're all versioned and they're all immutable, which is fantastic. It means that an auditor's not really able to argue that you're not managing them well. If you have rotations, that will be recorded in audit history and so on and so forth. So even just the simplest of Octopus Deploy features really do help in this world. This also extends to things like operations. So your runbooks also are versions. So if you're putting a Octopus Deploy server in between your operations teams and your production environments, then you've already met half the requirements in PCI or ISO 27001 for separation of duties and environments. Configuration as code is also an important feature, and that allows us to go one step further in showing high quality change management practices. Auditors will often want to see, well, how is the deployment server built? And this is the perfect way to do that as well. Now, showing you behind the scenes, we use Vanta at Octopus Deploy. I'm a great fan of their tool. And like I said, I would recommend that anyone on this journey would look at a compliance automation tool similar to it to make sure that you're tracking all the things that you need to track. It will keep track of all of the controls for you. Instead of you having to worry about 17 different standards and how they all map together, this tool has already taken care of a lot of that for you. And then it's minimized the amount of repeat and redundant work that you'll do to find all of that information. It will also help you keep track of your inventory, and you can see that we have a lot going on, and this helps solve the problem that sysadmin was having. It's like, I don't know what's out in production, so how do I actually control for it? At the scale that businesses like ours operate in, you need to be able to show that you are doing a good job of tracking this stuff, or you simply won't gain certification. And a nice outcome of all of this stuff is that we can then produce real-time feedback to our customers through a trust center. And I'll give you a QR code at the end of this slide deck so that you can go and visit it if you'd like. But this is a portal into all the different compliance controls that we meet. You can review all of our sub-processes that we engage for GDPR purposes. So you can see our data privacy particulars in that regard. You can access all of our certs. You can even sign up for real-time updates when sub-processes change. So this is an important tool for us to give to our customers, and it wouldn't be possible if we weren't using some kind of automation behind the scenes as well. So with that all said, I want to say thanks for coming today and spending some quality time with us here at Octopus Deploy, learning about how compliance is important and how you can use a variety of automation technologies to achieve the same sorts of continuous, always ready to audit compliance mentality that we have here today. And if you have any questions or feedback, then I'd love to talk to you about that, and you can reach me via the socials below. So with that said, have a great day. I'm Jim, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. Really appreciate that. I'm a big fan of Jim's. He does some great work at Octopus Deploy. One of the locations or one of the references that he made, I love this site. This came up a couple of years ago, I remember, on my radar, and this is at trust.octopus.com. This is that site that Jim was referencing earlier. And you can go here and you can see it's just littered with a ton of resources, including all our compliance, etc. So if you want to go and check that out, that's trust.octopus.com. All right, now we're at an interesting stage of SHIP right now. We're actually midway through day one. You may note that the live stream is currently playing on our homepage, which is octopus.com/shipped. And there you will find, the live stream is playing. However, one thing that we need to do is we need to switch over to live stream number 2. So in a moment's time, when you refresh that page, not now, but soon, when you refresh that page, what you'll find is that the inline player will have switched over to version 2, and you'll have the ability to obviously navigate there. Now, coming up for the schedule, we're going to take a break now. We've got approximately, let's see, we're going to start up at 50 minutes past the hour, so we've got approximately 15 minutes. So in approximately 15 minutes from now, I want you all to head over to our second stream, which should be on the page now. If you don't refresh yet, because you'll lose me if you do, but it will be on the page after you refresh. So once you refresh, you'll see the second stream in about 15 minutes or so. Join us there, where we're going to learn a little bit more about some of the work that folks on my team do. This is with Steve, Matt, and Charlotte. This is entitled The Research Panel. I won't reveal too much there, but we've got a lot of great sessions coming up this afternoon. For example, we've got Kit and Liam talking about Kubernetes deployments. We've got Michael and Bessie talking about feature toggles. This is a really cool session. We've got a bunch of other things as well. So make sure to join us over on the second stream. And if you need to find it, you'll find it on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, as the kids say. But you may also notice that some of the videos for this this event are actually starting to show up. So these are the recordings that we took of these videos. So if you happen to miss this, don't worry. Go to our YouTube channel. You'll see the keynote from Paul. You'll see call-in session on what we've shipped and what's next, along with the 2025.4 release party. So make sure to go check those out. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. We'll see you shortly on the second stream at approximately 15 minutes from now. All right, we'll see you then. I gotta set an outro video. There we go. All right, we'll see you soon.